Chapter 2701. Of course, she also accepted Rongjuishan Huan's words of gratitude. So she smiled and casually replied, "It's good that you know I'm good to you. Tonight I'll leave the task of pouring wine to you." Rongjuishan Heng almost patted his chest. "Don't worry, leave it to me." Ji Xinyu cast a sidelong glance at him. "Brother?" This kid was getting bolder and bolder. Rongjuishan Heng laughed dryly. "It's me, your brother. Little Shen, I'm a few months older than you after all. Actually, it's not a problem for you to call me brother." Ji Xinyu glanced at him and said casually, "When you can beat me, then expect me to call you brother." Rongjuishan Heng lowered his head. "This is difficult." He poured a glass of wine and drank it desolately. This wish of his would probably be difficult to fulfill in this lifetime. "If I can beat you, will you call me brother?" Rongjuishan Lan said with a faint smile. This sentence could almost be called flirting. Ji Xinyu looked at him strangely. Was this person crazy? This was between her and Rongjuishan Huan. Wasn't his mouth a little too abrupt? "Tianheng and I are friends are just joking. You don't have to interfere anymore." Ji Xinyu also drank a mouthful of wine. "You and I can't even be considered friends?" Rongjuishan Lan's smile deepened, but there seemed to be a touch of coldness in his sparkling eyes. Was this person here to bicker with her? Ji Xinyu frowned. She felt that Rongjuishan Lan was targeting her tonight. Before she opened her mouth, Rongjuishan Heng smiled and said, "Cousin, although you've always been more outstanding than me, the relationship between Brother Shen and I, you can't compare to it. After all, this is the first time you've met. It's a little too early to talk about friendship." Rongjuishan Lan looked at Ji Xinyu again. "This is the first time we've met?" Ji Xinyu pondered for a moment, then finally said, "It's only the second time." Rongjuishan Heng's eyes widened. "So you've met before, when?" "Brother Shen, I've never heard you mention this." Ji Xinyu glanced at him. "It's just a small matter, and there's no need for me to report my whereabouts to you, is there?" Rongjuetian Huan scratched his head. "That's not what I meant. I just thought that my cousin is so outstanding. No matter what, you would mention him to others. Besides, when you two met just now, I couldn't tell that you two had met before." Ji Xinyu's head was starting to hurt. She rubbed her forehead and said, "I'm not as nosy as you are. Besides, he's just someone I met by chance. There's no need for me to tell him." After he finished speaking, Ji Xinyu felt that the surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped. The breeze on the mountain peak was as cold as a small knife. She subconsciously hugged her arms and inadvertently raised her head. She saw Rongyue Tianlan looking at her with narrowed eyes. Her expression was somewhat unfathomable. She couldn't even tell if she was happy or angry. Ji Xinyu had always lived in the eyes of others. If she wanted to live a carefree life, she couldn't care less about the eyes of others. She had to treat them as floating clouds. After living in the midst of trouble for so long, some people had become extremely sensitive, while others had trained their nerves to be thicker than steel. She didn't care about those messy eyes at all. Ji Xinyu obviously belonged to the latter. So she glanced at Rongyue Tianlan inexplicably, then turned her gaze away. She didn't care at all. Chapter 2702. Therefore, she glanced at Rongyue Tianlan inexplicably, then looked away. She was too lazy to guess what Rongyue Tianlan was feeling at the moment. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her for a moment, then suddenly said, "Since there are 4 people drinking, where are the other 2 cups?" Ji Xinyu frowned slightly. "Well, I didn't know there would be so many people, so I brought my cup and his with me." She wasn't someone who often invited people to drink. Rongyue Tianlan's fingers clenched slightly in his sleeve. "It seems that your relationship is really good." Rongyue Tianheng smiled so widely that his teeth could be seen. He put his arm on Ji Xinyu's shoulder. "Of course. We are friends who have gone through life and death together, the kind who will never leave each other." Ji Xinyu's lips twitched. This brat's words today were really annoying. However, what he said couldn't be considered wrong. They were indeed friends and had gone through thick and thin together a few times. It wouldn't be appropriate to refute this at this time, so she smiled and didn't say anything. She picked up a cup of wine and said, "Come, let's toast to our friendship." She took the opportunity to push his wolf claws down. Rongyue Tianhuan naturally clinked his cup with hers, then drank it in one gulp. He smacked his lips and turned to show off to Rongyue Tianlan. "Eighth cousin, Brother Shen and I are not only close friends, even our interests and hobbies are similar. For example, this wine, I like this Luotian incense. Coincidentally, Brother Shen also likes this. Don't you think this is fate?" Ji Xinyu's hands trembled at his words. This brat spoke as if he was possessed today. What did he mean by fate? Wasn't that used to describe husband and wife or lovers? However, could family and friendship also be used as a metaphor? Ji Xinyu couldn't make up her mind. Although Rongyue Tianhuan had the reputation of being proficient in both literature and martial arts, he wasn't very accomplished in literature. Occasionally he would use idioms wrongly. So even if he used the wrong example now, it was understandable. Rongyue Tianlan's lips curled up slightly. He didn't say anything. A cup appeared between his fingers, and he poured himself a cup of wine. He took a sip, frowned and said faintly, "This wine doesn't suit my taste, it's too bland." Rongyue Tianhuan was not convinced. "This wine is strong enough, it has a lot of aftershocks. You freeloader, don't be picky. If you have the ability, bring out a better wine." Ji Xinyu rubbed the space between her eyebrows. Now is not the time to argue. He didn't bring anything with him, where would he get good wine? Don't talk about such trivial matters. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly shut his mouth and his gaze fell on Rongyue Tianlan's fingers. Like a magic trick, Rongyue Tianlan conjured a jar of wine from her fingertips. He peeled off the clay seal on the jar, and a strong and sweet wine aroma immediately overflowed. Ji Xinyu loved wine, so she could tell the quality of the wine just by smelling it. Now that she smelled it, she felt refreshed and all the pores on her body seemed to open up. Good wine. Two simple words seemed to be unable to describe the quality of this wine. Ji Xinyu had been drinking wine for so many years, but compared to this wine, all those wines seemed unbearable. Rongyue Tianhuan almost reached out to grab the wine jug. Good wine. Eighth cousin brother, why did you only bring out such good wine now? Come, fill it, fill it. He put the wine cup in his hand directly under the wine jug. Chapter 2703. Rongyue Tianlan took back the jug and said indifferently, "Don't you like to drink this Luotian Xiang? My wine may not be to your taste, so you shouldn't drink it." Rongyue Tianheng was speechless. Should he take back what he just said? Rongyue Tianlan's eyes fell on Ji Xinyu. "Would you like to try it?" Ji Xinyu said straightforwardly, "Okay." Rongyue Tianlan smiled. "Don't you only drink one type of wine?" Ji Xinyu raised her eyebrows. "When did I say I only drink one type of wine? I like all good wines." Rongyue Tianlan smiled and poured for her. "Please taste it." Rongyue Tianheng came over with a drooling face. "I'm also a wine taster, eighth cousin, let me taste this wine too." Rongyue Tianlan didn't give him any face. "You're a wine taster? Then can you smell what this wine is made of? If you can name 3 types, I'll treat you to it." Rongyue Tianheng sniffed hard and tried to guess. "There's sorghum?" Rongyue Tianlan was speechless. "You can't even guess the main ingredient, how can you call yourself a wine taster?" Rongyue Tianheng was not convinced. "You just let me smell it, how can I guess? I have to taste it." He then turned to Ji Xinyu for help. "Brother Xin, don't you think so?" This. Ji Xinyu coughed, a little ashamed of Rongyue Tianheng's white eyes. A wine taster could at least smell most of the ingredients. Rongyue Tianheng was probably the only one who couldn't smell a single type and still called himself a wine taster. She looked up and saw Rongyue Tianlan looking at her with a smile. "If you can name 3 types, you can also drink this wine on his behalf." Ji Xinyu's fingertips turned the wine cup. "Really? I'm not lying." Ji Xinyu smiled. "What if I can name 5 or 6 types?" Rongyue Tianlan paused. "I'll just give you that jug of wine." Even the world's famous wine tasters could only name 5 or 6 types after tasting the wine, and that was under the circumstances of being extremely knowledgeable about wine. But now, she was able to identify 5 or 6 different types just by smelling them. That was impossible. Ji Xinyu laughed again. "That's a good condition. Then listen carefully, the main ingredient of this wine should be a type of rice that grows in extremely cold places. Only the first half of the embryo is taken." As soon as she said this, Rongyue Tianheng shook his head with a smile. "How can a place of extreme cold produce rice? And only the first half? Isn't this just messing around?" Before he could finish his words, he felt his mouth tighten as if someone had sealed it. Rongyue Tianlan looked at Ji Xinyu, a light flashing in her eyes. "Continue." Ji Xinyu did not stand on ceremony and continued. "The wine made from this rice is extremely cold, so we need to use something produced in a very hot place to cool it down. If my guess is correct, this wine should have been mixed with the juice of tourmaline grass. The taste of tourmaline grass is bitter, so we also need to use a fruit to press it down. This fruit is called the fruit of mystery, and it needs to be picked in the morning when it has been washed with frost." Ji Xinyu spoke with fervor and assurance. Not only did she name 6 types of raw materials in one breath, she also mentioned the characteristics of these 6 types of raw materials and the necessary conditions to harvest them. As soon as she finished speaking, the peak fell into silence. Rongyue Tianheng's eyes darted around, he wanted to open his mouth but could not speak. After a while Ji Tianyue interrupted, "Brother Rongyue, is he right?" Chapter 2704. Rongyue Tianlan looked at Ji Xinyu with a complicated gaze, and a hint of passion flashed through his eyes. He nodded slowly, "Not bad. You're right. I admire you." He was good at brewing wine and usually had time, so in order to brew a jar of good wine he would work hard and run around just to brew the best wine. The wine he brewed was one of the best in the Tianxi continent, and no one could compare to it. Even Di Zun often came up with all kinds of reasons to drink his wine, thinking of ways to get his wine. But Di Zun was a lazy person. He only liked to drink, but was too lazy to taste the wine, and was too lazy to guess the ingredients used in the wine. To him, wine was enough as long as it tasted good. As for the ingredients, in Di Zun's eyes they were like floating clouds. So Rongyue Tianlan would occasionally feel that his family's good cabbage had been eaten by a pig, a regret that he couldn't find a soulmate. It was even more so in the Fanning continent. There were even fewer people who knew about wine. He didn't expect Ji Xinyu to be an expert in this field. She could say so much with just a sniff and so accurately, it was simply impressive. Ji Tianyu was also excited. "Brother Rongyue, I want to drink too. I want to try good wine too." Rongyue Tianlan didn't refuse, and casually conjured another cup, wanting to fill it for her. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly and reached out to stop him. "She's still a child, are you really letting her drink?" Rongyue Tianlan then reacted, and raised his hand to rub Ji Tianyu's head. "Children can't drink, you should just eat." Ji Tianyu pouted, "Can I just try one cup?" "Not even one cup," Ji Xinyu said directly. Children were not yet fully developed. Once they drank, it was easy for the alcohol to enter the brain and cause poisoning. If it wasn't done well, the child might become stupid from drinking. Ji Xinyu was used to protecting her sister, so she naturally didn't want her to drink. Rongyue Tianlan was also good at medicine, so he naturally understood this. Now that he reacted, he naturally wouldn't let Ji Tianyu drink. Ji Tianyu pouted even higher, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't recognize her sister, and thought that the person in front of her didn't want her to drink the wine she already had. Ji Xinyu couldn't bear to see her cry. She thought for a moment, then took out a bottle from her storage space. "Come Tianyu, drink this. This one suits you." It was a jar of fruit honey. Ji Tianyu took a sip and her eyes lit up. She liked to drink this. "Thank you, Brother Shin. This suits my taste very well." Ji Xinyu's voice was gentle. "If you like it, then drink more." She had originally bought this bottle for her sister. She had just taken it out in advance. Rongyue Tianlan was someone who kept her word, and directly gave the jar of wine to Ji Xinyu. In Ji Xinyu's hands, there would naturally be good wine for everyone to drink. Rongyue Tianheng could finally drink it. Rongyue Tianheng drank the wine he liked. Naturally, he didn't blame Rongyue Tianlan for sealing his mouth. The four of them sat on the four sides of the big rock, tasting the wine and admiring the moon. Ji Tianyu was also happy. She had been locked up in the palace for a long time, and this was the first time she was gathering with these people of the Jianghu. She felt that they were living very freely, and her big eyes were filled with envy. The only thing that made her a little depressed was that she couldn't get a word in most of what these people were talking about. There were many things that she didn't understand. Sitting at the side, it seemed that she could only drink fruit juice and eat. Chapter 2705. She was unwilling to be left out and suddenly suggested, "Brother Rongyue, Brother Shin, can I dance for you?" No one present objected. Rongyue Tianlan even took out a flute and said, "I'll accompany you." Ji Tianyue's eyes lit up. She hugged his arm and kissed him on the cheek. "I knew Brother Rongyue treats me the best." Ji Xinyu was stunned. She didn't expect her little sister to be so open. It seemed like they had only known each other for a day. Could this be the legendary love at first sight, falling in love at first sight? But wasn't her little sister a little too open? After all, Rongyue Tianlan was still her fiancé. As long as the engagement was not cancelled, he was still her real brother-in-law. Was it really good to be so passionate about a brother-in-law whom she had only known for a day? Moreover, she was still an underage child. What was she doing when she was her age? She was suppressed by all kinds of rumors and felt inferior. Every day she hid in a corner of the palace like a mouse. When she saw people whispering, she thought they were gossiping about her. At that time, she only faintly felt that she had such an unreliable fiancé. She didn't even know what fiancé meant. She only knew that it was this fiancé who pushed her into hell. She hated him so much. From then on she was especially disgusted with the word fiancé. At that time she didn't know what the relationship between a man and a woman was. Now that her little sister was doing this, did she already know about the relationship between a man and a woman? Or did she treat Rongyue Tianlan as a man who could be close to like her father, a child's intimacy? Rongyue Tianlan was also slightly stunned. With his martial arts, if he didn't want her to kiss Ji Tianyue, the sneak attack wouldn't have succeeded. If his face could be kissed so easily, then his face would have been covered in layers and layers of lipstick marks by now. When Ji Tianyue pounced over, he seemed to want to block but suddenly remembered something. His arm froze again. After a short pause, Ji Tianyue succeeded in stealing the kiss. Rongyue Tianlan glanced at Ji Xinyue. She was in a daze. He didn't know what she was thinking. She looked at Ji Tianyue and seemed to have some doubts. Rongyue Tianheng laughed out loud. What a fiery little princess. Little Tianyue, do you like this brother Rongyue? He's your brother-in-law. Ji Tianyue's face was as red as a tomato. She pursed her lips and said crisply, Brother Rongyu doesn't like my sister Xinyu. They will break off the engagement, so he is not my brother-in-law. Ji Xinyu's hand that was holding the wine glass paused for a moment. Although what her little sister said was true, but hearing her say it now, she still felt that it was a little jarring. In the imperial palace she doted on her younger sister the most, but her younger sister actually said such words in front of strangers. She glanced at Rongyue Tianlan, then looked at her younger sister with a smile. How did you know that they would break off the engagement? She didn't remember telling her younger sister. As for Rongyue Tianlan, he shouldn't be that gossipy, right? Ji Tianyue lowered her head slightly. I heard it from my sister and father personally. They said that they will go to the marriage pillar to cancel the engagement in a few days, so it can't be fake. Ji Xinyue. So Lil, sis had eavesdropped. After saying those words to imperial father, because she was not in a good mood, she took a long stroll outside before returning to her own courtyard. In the end, she saw Rongyue Tianlan and her little sister getting along well in her own courtyard. Chapter 2706. If that was the case, then her younger sister had used the butterfly to look for her elder sister, but she had actually gone after Rongyue Tianlan? She looked at Ji Tianyue with a complicated gaze. Her little sister was so young, yet she already had such a scheming mind? Rongyue Tianheng didn't expect that his joke would lead to Ji Tianyu's confession to his eighth cousin. He slightly choked and subconsciously frowned. Little Tianyu, is your sister Xinyu good to you? Sure. Ji Tianyue answered without hesitation. But what you're doing now is equivalent to stealing your sister's man. That's not very kind of you. Ji Tianyue blinked her eyes. They're about to break off the engagement. The only thing missing was a ceremony. That doesn't count as stealing big sister's men, right? This? Rongyue Shinheng rubbed his nose. He felt that what Ji Tianyue said made sense, but he subconsciously felt that something was wrong. He paused. Then what do you like about Brother Rongyu? Ji Tianyue thought for a moment and counted with her fingers. Brother Rongyue is handsome and capable. He is a dragon slayer hero. He also knew a lot of skills, and these skills were all top-notch. I fell in love with her the moment I saw her. Rongyue Tianheng had always known that his eighth cousin brother was attracting girls, but he didn't expect that he would even attract underage girls. He looked at Rongyue Tianlan. Rongyue Tianlan seemed to be quite shocked as well. She held the wine cup in her hand for a long time without drinking. He frowned slightly. He wanted to say something but he didn't. Rongyue Tianheng thought for a moment. Little Tianyu, have you discussed this matter with your sister Xinyu? Ji Tianyue shook her head. There's no need to discuss it. My sister dotes on me a lot and is willing to give me anything. As long as I want it, she will give it to me. Even if she doesn't want to break off the engagement, as long as Rongyue Gij doesn't like her and likes me, she will give him to me without a second word. This theory was truly valiant. Rongyue Tianheng couldn't help but argue with her. What if she doesn't let you? She also really likes you, Brother Rongyu. After all, they are a proper fiancé and fiancée. It's engraved on the marriage pillar. Ji Tianyue's mouth was slightly agape as if she had never thought of this question. He was stunned for a moment before he added, there's no such thing as if. She has already discussed this with Imperial Father. Even if it's agreed, it might not be true. Didn't they agree on their marriage back then? Wasn't she going to break off the engagement now? I'm only asking you, what will you do if your sister doesn't let you? Are you going to back out? Rongyue Tianheng pressed on. Ji Tianyue was obviously anxious. Her pretty face was flushed red and she couldn't say anything for a while. Rongyue Tianlan, who was at the side, finally spoke. His voice was cold and emotionless. Her sister may be eager to give up this marriage. Tianheng, don't make things difficult for a child here. Ji Tianyue was originally about to cry, but when she heard Rongyue Tianlan's words, her small face immediately glowed. Even brother Rongyue said that my sister would give in. Therefore there's no mistake. Rongyue Shenlin pondered for a moment and said, Tianyue, you are still a child. It is too early to think about these things. When you are older and more mature, it will not be too late to think about these things. Alright, let's go dance. If we don't dance, the moon will be leaning to the west. Brother Rongyue, I'm not young anymore. I'm 520 years old this year. When you and my sister Shenyu were engaged, she was only a little more than a year old. Ji Tianyue didn't give up. Chapter 2707. Rongyue Tianlan's lips twitched and he said seriously, so I don't want to make the same mistake twice. Do you understand? When his handsome face sank, it was still very imposing but also a little cold. Ji Tianyue was stunned. She was still afraid of him, so she paused and said, I'm going to dance. After such a conversation, Rongyue Tianlan seemed a little absent-minded. When he was accompanying Ji Tianyue, he played a few wrong notes. Ji Tianyue also seemed a little absent-minded. She sat there and drank cup after cup of wine. Her alcohol tolerance had always been not small. It could be said that she would not get drunk even after 1,000 cups. But this night, perhaps because of her physical condition, after 2 hours she was a little drunk and her head was a little dizzy. Fortunately, she still knew that she could not get drunk here. She found an excuse and stood up. I can't hold my liquor. The three of you can continue to play here. I'll take my leave first. Rongyue Tianheng looked at her slightly staggered footsteps and quickly stood up. I'll send you down. No need, I can go down by myself. It was just a steep mountain, it was not difficult for her. She strode to the edge of the cliff. Even if she could not fly with her spiritual force with her qinggong, it was not difficult to fly down. Looking at the protruding stone on the cliff, she rubbed her eyes and calmed herself down. When she looked down again, the stone finally stopped shaking. She smiled in relief and was just about to jump down when she saw the right spot. She was not prepared for a sudden flash in front of her eyes. Her waist was tightened and she was carried by someone. I'll take you down. The faint fragrance of plum blossoms entered her nose. Ji Tianyue subconsciously raised her hand to push him. Hey! No need. Before she could finish her sentence, she was already lifted into the air and flew down the mountain in the blink of an eye. Rongyue Tianheng, his seemingly gentle but actually unapproachable eighth cousin, actually carried Hero Shenyu down in a princess carry. This was a little shocking to his eyes. At the same time, a strange feeling arose in his heart, as if something that originally belonged to him was suddenly snatched away. Ji Tianyue also opened her mouth slightly and ran to the edge of the mountain in disbelief. She watched helplessly as her brother Rongyu carried brother Shen and rode a cloud down the mountain peak, disappearing into the clouds and mist. She bit her lips slightly. Although brother Rongyu doted on her, he had never hugged her like this. At most, he would stroke her head in the same way as her father did. She thought for a moment and suddenly ran back. She picked up the wine jar and declared, I want to drink too. Rongyue Tianhuan jumped in fright and snatched it from her. Children shouldn't drink. No, I want to drink. If I drink too much, brother Rongyue will also hug me. Ji Tianyue revealed her purpose. Give me the wine. Rongyue Tianhuan was speechless. He simply threw the wine jar into the storage space. If I say no, then no. Children will become stupid when they drink too much. You don't want to become stupid. He changed the topic. But if you want him to hug you, you can't just get drunk. Ji Tianyue's eyes immediately brightened. What other methods are there? For example, if you fall or bump into something and hurt your leg. Rongyue Tianheng came up with a bad idea and then looked at her with a smile. A little princess raised in the palace must be afraid of pain. She would definitely be reluctant to hurt her leg. Chapter 2708. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianyue nodded in agreement. That's a good idea. Then she suddenly slammed her head against a rock. Rongyue Shenhuan didn't expect her to do that and didn't stop her. Then, he watched as her legs were dyed red with blood at a speed visible to the naked eye. Is this okay? Ji Tianyue's face was pale from the pain, but she still smiled. Rongyue Shenhuan was speechless. He had the urge to slap himself. At the same time, he felt a chill in his heart. This little girl was not as innocent as she looked, she was ruthless. If his eighth cousin really liked her and they got married, then it was fine. But if he didn't like her, he didn't know what this little girl would do with her resolute personality. His eighth cousin's love life might not be smooth. Rongjuishan Huan lit a candle for his eighth cousin in his heart. Rongjuishan Huan thought that his eighth cousin would send someone down and come back in at most 15 minutes. He didn't expect that half an hour had passed and there was still no trace of him. It was just sending someone away. He didn't have to sing a song of 10 miles down there, right? Why didn't he come back up? Rongjuishan Huan was very puzzled. He glanced at Ji Tianyue beside him. The little girl's leg was bleeding a lot, almost forming a blood pool on the ground. Her little face was getting paler and paler. The little girl probably wanted her brother Rongjuishan to see her like this and pity her. Not only would he personally bandage her wound, but he would also carry her directly back to the palace. So, she didn't allow Rongjuishan Huan to bandage her wound, and she didn't even use his medicine. She just stared at the place where Rongjuishan had jumped. Her eyes lit up at the slightest movement, but she was soon disappointed. Rongjuishan Huan couldn't bear to see her like this. He took out a bandage from nowhere and handed it over. Why don't you bandage yourself first? It's not good to keep bleeding. He still wanted to drink, but he didn't have the appetite to see a little girl bleeding like a river. Moreover, this little girl was someone that his eighth cousin cared about. If he just stood there and watched while she bled, his eighth cousin would probably hit him with a fan. Ji Tianyue bit her lips and was about to cry. No. Why isn't he back yet? Rong Huan rubbed his forehead. This? I really don't know. Perhaps he feels like old friends with Brother Shin at first sight and wants to say goodbye? Don't worry, you're still here. He'll come back sooner or later. After another quarter of an hour, Ji Tianyue was bleeding so much that her vision was turning black. However, there was still no sign of Rong Yuishanlin. Why isn't he back yet? Woo, he might as well let me bleed to death here and make him regret it. The little girl's tears began to fall, and she could not help but say some harsh words. The veins on Rongyue Tianhuan's temples throbbed. Actually, he hated women who used these tricks of crying, throwing a tantrum and threatening to commit suicide. He felt that it was extraordinarily troublesome. Who would have thought that this little girl, who was as beautiful as a glaze, would be no exception? This surprised him a little and even made him a little disappointed. He was beautiful, and although his kung fu was not as good as Ji Xinyu's, he was still one of the best in the Sanskrit continent. He also had a noble status, so he was quite popular with women. The number of people who wanted to marry him could line up for miles. He could be considered a playboy. However, he had also grown up in the palace. Chapter 2709. However, he also grew up in the palace and saw with his own eyes how the women in the harem fought over a man, using all kinds of jealousy, all kinds of obstacles, and all kinds of underhanded methods. This made him feel that these women were somewhat disgusting in the eyes of an outsider, making him unable to arouse any interest. To be honest, he somewhat looked down on these women, so when he was with them he was just putting on a show and taking what he needed. He always felt that a wanderer like him would not stay for any woman, and he did not have the thought of marrying anyone. He originally saw that Ji Tianyu was innocent and direct, and felt that she was different from the rest. He even thought that this little girl might grow up to be a clear stream in the turbid current, but he did not expect that she would also do such things. She was indeed a child who grew up in the palace. After watching so many palace dramas, she unknowingly used such methods. He did not know what kind of personality Ji Xinyu had. Listening to the rumors, she was actually quite outstanding. He just did not know if eighth cousin's head had been kicked by a donkey, only thinking of breaking off the engagement. No. If he really broke off the engagement with Ji Xinyu, then wouldn't his uncle the emperor force him to take the blame again? Rongyue Tianheng shuddered and deeply worried about this. He was still young and dissolute and wanted to be free for a few more years. He did not want to be implicated by a family so soon. What's more, he did not have a serious love, and he was not willing to walk into the grave of marriage like this. If he wanted to marry, he would marry the girl he liked. Only then would he be worthy of the title of dissolute young master. He thought about all the girls he knew in his mind, and felt that none of them were worthy of him. He was not willing to marry anyone. Although he knew all kinds of girls, he did not like any of them. Suddenly, Xinyu's figure jumped out from his mind and a thought flashed through his mind. If he wants to marry, he would marry someone like Xinyu. When this thought flashed through his mind, it was as if his head was struck by lightning. Xinyu was a man. God, how could he have this kind of thought? Could it be that he was gay? Rongyue Tianheng's heart was like a fire, and he was a little dazed. The sound transmission talisman on his waist lit up, and it lit up with a light blue luster. He was a little puzzled. He hadn't set any of his friends' voice transmissions to be of this color. He casually picked up the call and the voice of the eighth cousin brother who had been waiting for a long time came out of the voice-transmitting charm. Tianheng, I have something to do and can't come back. Please send Princess Tianyue back. After a few simple words, the voice transmission talisman was extinguished. Rongyu Shenheng. Naturally, Ji Tianyue, who was at the side, also heard it. She finally burst into tears, feeling extremely wronged. Rongyu Tianheng looked at her sympathetically and felt that she should be wronged. This little girl had injured her leg for nothing and was still bleeding until now. The only problem was how to send the little girl back. He did not want to carry her like a princess. He felt that his princess carry should be reserved for the woman he liked. But this little girl's leg was injured so badly that she probably couldn't walk on her own. Rongjuishan Huan rubbed his forehead with a headache. Did he just shoot himself in the foot? Ji Tianyue probably couldn't bear the disappointment and continued to throw a tantrum. I don't want you to send me off. I want him to come back and pick me up. Sob sob, I might as well just die here. Chapter 27:10. Before she could finish her sentence, Rongyu Tianhuan's hand chopped over, directly knocking her unconscious. Then he casually summoned a donkey, threw Ji Tianyu onto the donkey and flew down the mountain with the donkey. Sunlight shone in through the window screen, sprinkling spots of light on the ground. A warm blanket, a soft bed and a soft and slippery curtain. Ji Xinyu sat at the head of the bed with a human-shaped doll in her arms. She was a little confused. The human-shaped doll was almost as long as a person. It was soft and looked very delicate. It was very comfortable to hold. Ji Xinyu looked at the doll in her arms and then looked around. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't understand what was going on. She was used to being independent. No matter where she drank, she would control the amount and not let herself get drunk. She didn't want any accidents to happen and there was no one to save her. Last night she didn't feel really drunk. At most she felt a little dizzy. After Rongyu Tianlan carried her down the mountain, he put her down under her strong protest. She remembered that she had thanked him properly and bade him goodbye. He didn't say anything. Then she walked out of the mountain, and then what was it again? Her dizziness got worse and worse and her drunkenness got stronger and stronger. Only then did she understand how strong Rongyu Tianlan's jar of wine was. She had drunk more than half of the jug of wine. When the mountain wind blew, she felt the whole world shaking. She felt that she probably couldn't withstand it, so she wanted to find a cave to sober up first. After resting for a while, she would think of a way to go back after the alcohol had subsided. Then she found a cave as expected. But that cave had an owner, and it was an extremely irritable owner. It was a huge unicorn. Unicorns were herbivores. Usually it was better to stay away from it and not provoke it. It didn't like to talk to people. But Ji Xinyu came to snatch its cave. This pissed it off. Ordinary cultivators didn't dare to provoke this kind of beast because it had thick skin and a lot of blood. It was hard to kill and it was the kind of master that wouldn't rest until it was dead. Once provoked, it would be even more sticky than a dog's skin plaster. If Ji Xinyu was fine, this kind of beast was no match for her. She could deal with it in a quarter of an hour. However, she was drunk at that time and couldn't even stand properly. She also couldn't use her spiritual power, so it was dangerous for her to encounter such a big guy. She vaguely remembered that she was half sober from her drunken stupor and fought with the unicorn for almost an hour. She even vomited all over the big fellow, and then? Ji Xinyu hugged the doll and stared blankly at the top of the tent for a moment. She realized that she couldn't remember anything. The sound of her waking up alarmed the personal maid that her imperial father had just assigned to her, Xiao Qin. This little girl was quite smart, she did things quickly and was also loyal to Ji Xinyu. When she saw Ji Xinyu open her eyes, she immediately ran in happily to greet her. Princess, you're awake. His Highness Rongyu is right, you should wake up at this time. Are you hungry? Do you want some porridge? The little girl spoke like a machine gun, but Ji Xinyu caught the main point from her words. She paused for a moment. How did I come back? That 8th Highness Rongyu has already come to visit me? Xiao Qin giggled and said, Princess, you were brought back by Her Highness Rongyu. The doll in Ji Xinyu's arms fell to the ground. What? Xiao Qin hurriedly picked up the doll, patted the dust off it and put it back in her arms. Chapter 27:11. Xiao Qin quickly picked up the doll and patted the dust off it before putting it back in her arms. Princess, you drank too much last night? His Highness Rongyu carried you in directly and gave me a fright. After His Highness Rongyu put you down, he told me to take good care of you. He said that you would be hungry if you woke up around this time, so he asked me to prepare some plain porridge and iced nut soup. His Highness Rongyue really cares for you and I am happy for you. Princess, I will ask someone to bring the porridge and soup up. Xiao Qing left like a gust of wind. Ji Xinyue's mind was in a daze. She looked at herself and saw that she was wearing a soft nightgown. It was not the same as last night. Who changed it for her? Could it be, did he see through her identity? The veins on Ji Xinyue's forehead throbbed. She raised her hand and rubbed the space between her eyebrows again and again, desperately trying to think of what to do next. But her mind was blank and she still could not think of anything. While she was in a daze, Xiao Qing ran back like a gust of wind with a food box. She placed 2 bowls of fragrant porridge and soup on the table. Ji Xinyue got up to wash up and asked leisurely, "Where did this doll come from? Who changed my clothes for me?" "I was the one who helped your Highness change your clothes, but your Highness had been hugging the doll all this time. I was afraid that it would press on you, so I wanted to move it to the side, but your Highness kept hugging it tightly and refused to let go. Did Rongyue Tianlan buy this doll for her? Speaking of which, why did he buy this for her? Could it be that she accidentally said that she liked dolls when she was drunk? She seemed to have thought of something. Xiao Qing, where are the old clothes that I changed out of?" She was wearing men's robes when she went out, and she was also wearing the same clothes when she drank with Rongyue Tianlan. If she was wearing the clothes that Rongyue Tianlan carried back, then there was no doubt that her identity had been seen through by him. "Here." Xiao Qing took a small package from the side and opened it, revealing a light red dress. "Your Highness's clothes are here. I was going to wash them today." Ji Xinyue was stunned. This dress was what she usually wore in the palace. When she went out, she should have put it in her storage space to change into when she returned to the palace. He was so drunk last night, how could he change his clothes? If she didn't change it herself, then Rongyue Tianlan must have helped her change it. This thought caused her heart to skip a beat. Heat spread across her cheeks. "Princess, your face is so red. Is the room too hot? Last night, Her Highness Rongyue sent you back and said that drunk people are afraid of the cold and should not catch a cold. She specially ordered this servant to put a brazier in this room." Xiao Qing was good at observing people's expressions. Ji Xinyu finished the porridge and soup in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, and put the bowl on the table. "Take your time to clean up, I'm going out for a bit." In the blink of an eye, she disappeared. "Little Qing, where was the princess going in such a hurry?" Ji Xinyue rushed straight into Rongyue Tianlan's courtyard. She didn't want to have a bunch of questions in her stomach. She wanted to ask him clearly. However, she missed. Rongyue Tianlan was not there. Only the 2 palace servants who served him were cleaning up the flowers and plants outside the hall. Seeing her rush in, the 2 palace servants raised their eyebrows in surprise. Although Ji Xinyue and Rongyue Tianlan lived next door, Ji Xinyue rarely came to this courtyard. Chapter 27:12. Although Ji Xinyue and Rongyue Tianlan lived next door, Ji Xinyue rarely came to this courtyard. Most of the time, it was Rongyue Tianlan who went to treat her illness. It was the first time she was in such a hurry like today. Ji Xinyue was too lazy to beat around the bush. "Where is Her Highness Rongyue?" The 2 people finally reacted, one of them stuttering. "Her Highness went to the little Princess Crystal Moon Palace early in the morning. She should be back soon." Ji Xinyue didn't know why, but her heart sank slightly as if a small bubble in the depths of her heart burst with a pop. But she didn't feel it, only frowning slightly. She went to Ji Tianyue's place early in the morning. What did this person mean by that? He was trying to please her and her sister. Should she still ask him the truth? She hesitated and thought about it, but the 2 people misunderstood and thought that she was jealous and unhappy. One of them hurriedly added, "I heard that the little princess was injured last night, and Her Highness Rongyue went to treat her." As soon as he finished speaking, the 3rd princess, who had been muttering to herself a moment ago, disappeared. The 2 people looked at each other again. The 3rd princess was so skilled. The Crystal Moon Palace was the most dreamy place in the entire palace. Crystal tiles, tortoiseshell walls, coral walls, the entire palace was built like a crystal palace. In the courtyard there were fake mountains, strange stones and 9 winding corridors. The bottom of the corridor was hollow, paved with a kind of jade. When people stepped on it, it would make a tinkling sound like playing a guqin. At this time there was a chess table in this winding corridor, and the black and white chess pieces on the table were fighting fiercely. 2 people sat opposite each other at the table, one in blue and the other in pink. The one in blue was Rongyue Tianlan, and the one in pink was Ji Tianyue. Among the 4 virtues of a woman, besides needlework and cooking, if one was good at music, chess, calligraphy and painting, it was also very glorious. Ji Tianyue was good at chess, but compared to Rongyue Tianlan she was not even one universe away. As soon as the game started she was defeated by him and her army was utterly defeated. Rongyue Tianlan's slender fingers stretched out, and a chess piece fell, killing a large number of her chess pieces. Princess Ji Tianyue's small face blushed and she pouted coquettishly, "Brother Rongyue, can't you let me win?" Rongyue Tian raised her hand and calmly tidied up the chess pieces on the chessboard. "There is no father and son on the chessboard. This cannot be allowed. Your chess skills still need to be honed. Let's do it again next time." "No, I want another round. I don't believe that I can't win even one stone." Princess Ji Tianyue's stubborn temper also rose. However, Rangi Yuishinlan was somewhat dispirited. "It's getting late. You should go and have your meal. Or next time." No. Let's go for another round, okay?" Ji Tianyue looked at him pitifully. "Tianyue's legs don't hurt only when I play chess." Rongyue Tian didn't know why she was in a daze and didn't react for a while. Ji Tianyue waved her small hand in front of his eyes. "Brother Rongyu? Brother Rongyu?" Rangi Yuishinlan finally regained his senses. He looked at the chessboard and then looked at Ji Tianyue opposite him. He raised his hand and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. "Alright, just one game." The black and white chess pieces fell on the chessboard again. Ji Tianyue excitedly opened her mouth. "Brother Rongyue, your chess skills are amazing. I want to be as good as you. Can you teach me please? If you teach me for a few years, maybe my chess skills can be on par with yours." Chapter 27:13. "I'm still young after all, I've only learned for 300 years. Rong Yuishinlan glanced at her and shook his head slightly. Chess skills were completely dependent on talent. The master could lead the way but the cultivation depended on the individual. After learning the basic chess skills, the rest depended entirely on talent and perception. Ji Tianyue did not have such perception at all. Even if she learned chess for a few thousand years, she would still be as bad as she was today. Back then Ning Xuema was only in her teens, but she was able to cause a storm and defeat him. "Is that okay, Brother Rongyu?" Ji Tianyue's big eyes were as clear as crystals. Rong Yuishinlan's gaze swept across her eyes. His fingers paused for a moment before he finally agreed, "Okay. To play chess you need to have qi. Only when you have qi can you practice well. If you hit the head, the tail will follow." He began to explain to her the ways to play chess and pointed out where to place each chess piece in her hand. The autumn wind blew and the autumn flowers bloomed. There was a Bodhi tree in the courtyard. The palm-sized Bodhi leaves were blown down by the wind and swirled down, occasionally landing on the chessboard or their clothes. The Bodhi leaves were golden yellow, contrasting with the pink flowers in the flower bed beside them. It was as beautiful as a painting. When Ji Tianyue rushed to the entrance of the Crystal Moon Palace, she saw this scene. She stood there and watched everything. She saw a leaf fall on Ji Tianyue's hair and was blown up by the wind. Ji Tianyue was focused on the chessboard and did not notice it at all. It was Rong Yuishinlan's fingertips that flicked it away. Ji Tianyue seemed to have just noticed this and smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Brother Rongyu." Her smile was like a blooming flower bud, beautiful and tender. Rong Yuishinlan's gaze paused on her face for a moment before he looked away again. His gaze returned to the chessboard and he continued to point at her. They played chess as if there was no one else around, as if no one else was allowed to step in between them. Perhaps it was because they were too focused, but neither of them noticed Ji Xinyu standing outside the courtyard. Ji Tianyue stood there for a moment, then turned and left without saying a word. Just as he turned the corner, he bumped into the second princess, Ji Xinmeng. Ji Xinmeng was leaning over the railing to feed the fishes. When he saw her walk over, he raised his head and smiled. He said leisurely, "You saw that too? What does it feel like to see your fiancé and your sister together?" Ji Xinyu ignored her and walked past her. "Yo, you also have times when you feel so bad? This was really rare. However, don't blame me for telling you the truth. You really don't deserve him. It would be better for you to leave as soon as possible." "Sister, I heard that yesterday evening, His Highness Rongyu personally went to see our Imperial Father, saying that he is interested in Tianyu and wants Imperial Father to give Tianyu to him." Ji Xinming's tone was sour and gloating. Ji Xinyu finally stopped and turned around to look at her. Ji Xinming felt that his words had a great effect and became even more proud. "Third sister, sometimes people have to know their own limits. No matter how good a phoenix is, it's not something a sparrow can match. Don't you think so?" Ji Xinyu suddenly smiled. "You're right, a sparrow is indeed not worthy of a phoenix. It seems like sister has been pining for him for thousands of years and even had the servant girls spread rumors about him being childhood sweethearts. You didn't hesitate to ruin your own reputation just to get involved with him? I don't know what sister went through, but you suddenly thought it through and realized that a sparrow is not worthy of a phoenix? Chapter 27:14. Ji Shinming's expression changed. What nonsense are you talking about? Ji Shinhua smirked. You know what I'm talking about. She ignored her and turned to leave. You better explain yourself. Ji Shinming was so angry that she trembled as she held onto the railing. Ji Shinhua didn't even look back as she went down the bridge. How shameless are you? The husband that you've been waiting for 3,000 years was easily snatched away by your sister, and you're still acting like you don't care? So what if you're good at martial arts? You'll still be dumped. If I were you, I'd just jump off this bridge and drown. Ji Shinming didn't even finish her rant before she suddenly screamed. The railing next to her broke and she fell headfirst into the water. With a loud splash, a huge splash was created. By the time she finally emerged from the lake in a daze, Ji Shinyu had already disappeared without a trace. Ji Shinming? Why did the railing suddenly break? It must be that stinky girl's doing. It was really cold to be in the water in this kind of weather. Although Ji Shinming was usually surrounded by servants, he purposely sent all the servants away today to provoke Ji Shinhua. Now she could only tremble as she climbed onto the shore. Just as she put her hand on the bluestone steps, a pair of dragon-embroidered boots appeared in front of her. She was startled and looked up from the boots to see her father in a bright yellow robe. She shuddered. Father Emperor? She decided to complain first. Father Emperor, Shinyu is very rude. She has always disliked me as her older sister. This son was just admiring the fish here and ignored her. I even asked her about it with concern. I never thought that she would be so ignorant. She actually deliberately broke the railing of the bridge and caused your daughter to fall into the water. Father Emperor, you have to help this son get justice. She had always been good at acting. She had done this many times in front of the South Sky Emperor, and she always succeeded in provoking her father's anger, causing him to become more and more dissatisfied with Ji Shinhua. In addition, she was already trembling from the cold, so this made her voice tremble even more. Her hair and body were dripping wet, making her look even more pitiful and realistic. The South Heaven Emperor looked at her with an indecipherable expression. After she finished speaking, he slowly said, I saw it from beginning to end. Ji Shinming shuddered and his face turned pale. We doted on you so much in vain. I didn't expect you to become so vicious and maliciously hurt your sister. Ji Shinming had always been gentle and magnanimous in front of the South Heaven Emperor, like a good elder sister, but he didn't expect to reveal his true colors in front of his father today. He was tongue-tied. The South Heaven the Arch looked at her again and said coldly, as a woman, you should follow the way of women the most. You actually. Pausing here, he took a step back and ordered, immediately send the second princess back to the Nantian clan. Without my order, she is not to set foot in the Nantian clan again. Ji Shinming? Her face turned pale. Ji Shinyu was strolling alone in the garden. After all, it was already late autumn and most of the spring flowers in the garden had withered without a trace. Only the luoqing flowers next to a small pavilion were blooming beautifully. Ji Shinyu stood in front of the flower bed and gently picked up a branch to sniff it. The faint fragrance seemed to extinguish the fire in her heart for no reason. Chapter 27:15. Shinyu, so you're here. Ji Shinyu raised her head and saw her father, the South Heaven Emperor, walking towards her. Ji Shinyu paused for a moment, then bowed to her father. Today the South Heaven Emperor and his daughter seemed to have a lot to talk about. He talked a lot with Ji Shinyu. Ji Shinyu felt that her father didn't come to talk to her today, so she listened patiently. Sure enough, after some small talk, the South Heaven Emperor finally got to the point. He pretended not to care and said, Oh right, Shinyu, yesterday when the lanterns were lit, Tianlan suddenly brought Tianyu to me to ask for something. Ji Shinyu raised her eyebrows and looked at her father. What is it? A marriage proposal? The South Heaven Emperor shook his head slightly. Don't listen to Shinming's nonsense. He still has an engagement with you. Why would he directly ask for my daughter's hand? What he's asking for is something else. Ji Shinyu didn't say anything and waited for the South Heaven Emperor to continue. As expected, the South Heaven Emperor continued. He said that because he wanted to break off the engagement with you, he felt very sorry for our Nantian clan. Seeing that your little sister is smart, He wants to keep her by his side and personally teach her some martial arts as compensation to the Nantian clan. Ji Xinyu's lips twitched slightly, but she didn't say anything. Sorry for her, but compensation to her little sister? Rongyue Tianlan's compensation was interesting. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes yesterday, perhaps she would have thought that Rongyue Tianlan sincerely wanted to compensate the Nantian clan by teaching his strange martial arts to Ji Tianyu. But now, Rongyue Tianlan's intentions were obviously not pure. Last night should have been the first time her little sister met him, right? It was lightning that stirred up the earth fire, 10,000 years in a flash. Ji Xinyu had never believed in love at first sight. How could a man and a woman fall head over heels in love with each other just by looking at their faces for the first time? One must know that one's appearance was the easiest to deceive. What if a man's appearance was good, but his character was trash? Or what if a woman's appearance was beautiful enough to cause the downfall of a country, but her character or living habits were flawed? In her opinion, this so-called love at first sight only appeared in those stories to fool those young girls. Those inexperienced little girls might fall in love at first sight, but for someone like her who had grown up in a nest of rumors, she had long been immune to such talk. But now that a real-life version of love at first sight was playing out in front of her, she knew that it was real. Ji Tianyue was still underage, so it was not strange for her to fall in love at first sight. However, for a playboy like Rongyue Tianlan to also fall in love at first sight, this was beyond Ji Xinyue's expectations and also opened her eyes. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. The South Heaven Emperor beside her was still rambling. When the South Heaven Emperor saw her a few days ago, he always told her to think of ways to hook Rongyue Tianlan into her hands so that this marriage could not be cancelled. This time, he asked her when she would leave with Rongyue Tianlan to go to the Pillar of Marriage to cancel the engagement. He even said earnestly, "Imperial Father has also thought about it. The two of you don't have any feelings for each other. A melon twisted by force won't be sweet. It's better to break off this marriage as soon as possible. This way the man and woman will have nothing to do with each other." Although Ji Xinyu also wanted to break off the engagement with Rongyue Tianlan, now that she heard her father's words, her heart sank. She knew that he saw that Rongyue Tianlan and her little sister were interested in each other, and she was standing between them like a tiger blocking the road. Therefore, her biological father wanted to get rid of her, this tiger blocking the road, to pave the way for his little daughter's pursuit of her husband. Chapter 27:16. Although she had already been disappointed, now that she thought it through, she still felt a chill in her heart. It was as if someone had thrown her into ice water and soaked her in it. Perhaps because she was unhappy today, she was a little sensitive and accidentally asked the truth. What she asked was exactly what she was thinking. In the end, she couldn't help but ask, "Father, I am also your daughter, why must you treat me like this? Am I not your biological daughter?" The South Sky Emperor probably didn't expect his daughter to speak so sharply to him today and was stunned for a moment. He also deeply felt sorry for his third daughter, but, "Xinyu, you misunderstood Father. Father has always been worried about you, but you said yourself that you and Tianlan have no feelings for each other, so why must you be tied together? It's rare for him to take a fancy to your sister. This is also a good thing. After all, one should not let one's own fertile water flow into one's own fields. That's right, Xinyu, this time at the banquet those people finally don't misunderstand you so much anymore. Many immortal monarchs are interested in you, and there are already several groups of people who have come to propose marriage. Those people are not weak, although they can't compare to Rongyue Tianlan, they are still nobles. Father wants to wait until you cancel this marriage and arrange for you to meet them so that we can properly choose for you." The South Sky Emperor finally said the real purpose of this trip. After he finished speaking, he turned his head and was stunned for a moment. Ji Xinyu stood there, twirling a flower in her hand. She lowered her head and sniffed it, her voice indifferent. "It's rare for Father to be so biased. Father, don't worry, my marriage with Rongyue Tianlan will definitely be cancelled. As for who he likes, it has nothing to do with me. I'm not giving up my position to anyone, I'm just following my heart. As for my marriage in the future, I beg Father not to interfere, I won't give you a chance to interfere." When she said the last sentence, her voice was cold. It made the South Sky Emperor's heart suddenly turn cold, as if something important was leaving him. He was a little flustered. "Xinyu, you misunderstood Father." He paused here because he saw Ji Xinyu take out a doll from her storage space. The doll was the size of a 7 or 8-year-old child, the cloth and other things on it were old, but it looked very clean. It could be seen that the person who owned the doll cared for it very much. "Father, do you recognize this doll?" The South Sky Emperor was a little confused, slightly frowning. This is? The doll looked like an ordinary doll, he couldn't see what was special about it. Ji Xinyu's eyes, her eyes fell on the doll, she laughed self-deprecatingly. Father really doesn't remember. This was a gift from Imperial Father for Xinyu's 500th birthday. At that time, everyone in the palace had forgotten Xinyu's birthday, causing Xinyu to be very disappointed. Xinyu used a doll, Xinyu at that time Xinyu really happy. To Xinyu, this doll was something that her royal father had casually given to her. However, to Xinyu, this doll was a symbol of how much her royal father doted on her, and she had always treated it as a treasure. When she was in the Purple Cloud sect, Xinyu would hug it to sleep at night. Chapter 27:17. Every time I held it, I would bathe and change my clothes, afraid that it would be a bit broken or dirty. Every time, I would tell it that Father still loves me and doesn't want me. This doll is proof. South Sky King's face was a bit pale, and his heart seemed to be squeezed by something. Xinyu? Ji Xinyu smiled again. Xinyu always tells herself that Father actually loves Xinyu, but because of these things, Father is a bit angry at Xinyu. But Father will understand in the future, and know that he doesn't blame Xinyu, and will even treat Xinyu well. When Xinyu comes back, Father will see that Xinyu has learned so well, and will definitely be proud of Xinyu. He won't care about those rumors and will be good to Xinyu. He will even arrest the people who spread the rumors. After all, Xinyu was once Father's daughter. But what did Father do at that time? South Sky King opened his mouth slightly, but couldn't say anything. At that time, he seemed to be worried about the marriage of the first and second princesses. Xinyu came back and wanted to show off the martial arts she learned, but was impatiently kicked out by him. Royal Father, Xinyu has actually always hoped that you would treat me like how you treat my two older sisters. But Royal Father has always treated me differently. You allowed my two older sisters to humiliate me, allowed those subjects to ruin my reputation, and even vented their anger on my mother. Now, for the sake of your youngest daughter, you're forcing me to do this. Royal Father, my heart is also made of flesh. When I am hurt, it will also hurt and it will also be disappointed and even despair. South Sky King's face became even paler. Xinyu? Father has indeed mistreated you, Father will compensate you in the future. No need. Ji Xinyu softly said 3 words, Xinyu doesn't need it anymore. Father, Xinyu will return this doll to you today. The doll flew out of her hand and landed in South Sky King's hand. With a turn it disappeared. South Sky King was completely stunned. He looked at the old doll in his arms. It was hard to imagine that an ordinary doll could be preserved so well for so many years. Nearly 3,000 years. This old doll still had a faint body temperature which gradually cooled down in the autumn wind. South Sky King's heart was in a panic as if he had lost an important thing in his life forever. Xinyu. A moment later he finally reacted and staggered towards Ji Xinyu's courtyard. He wanted to have a good chat with her and tell her that he had never given up on her. In his heart, she had always been his daughter. He suddenly stopped in his tracks. If he told his daughter all this without any basis, she probably wouldn't listen. Since she liked dolls so much, he would buy her a few more. He wanted to bring a bunch of dolls over and tell her that he had just ignored her and vented his anger on her. Now that he knew he was wrong, he bought her so many dolls. He immediately summoned the head chief steward and ordered him to quickly handle this matter. The chief steward was dumbfounded. He didn't know why the South Heaven Emperor suddenly had such a childish heart. However, since it was His Majesty's order, he naturally did not dare to disobey and immediately arranged for people to go. When South Heaven Emperor brought a bunch of dolls into Ji Xinyu's meditation garden, he found nothing. There were only a few maids in Jingxin Park, but Ji Xinyu was nowhere to be seen. The maids trembled as they reported to him. After the princess came back, she stayed in the room for a while before leaving. However, she left a letter on the table. Chapter 27:18. The South Sky Emperor's heart sank. His daughter had left home again. He was afraid that she would never come back this time. Where's the letter? The South Sky Emperor strode into the room. He finally saw the letter. However, the words on the envelope read, to Rongyue Tianlan. This letter was for Rongyue Tianlan, not for him. The letter was light and there was only 1 page inside. Obviously there wasn't much written. The South Sky Emperor was hesitant. He wondered if he should open it to take a look. He then looked around the room and saw a rather exquisite doll lying on Ji Xinyu's bed. It was lying there alone as if it had been abandoned. The South Sky Emperor asked, where did this doll come from? The maids looked at each other. Xiao Qing answered in a low voice, It's the princess who brought it back yesterday. The South Sky Emperor felt even more uneasy. She was hurt so badly? She didn't even want the doll that she bought herself? He wanted to open the letter even more. He wanted to see what she had left for Rongyue Tianlan. After thinking about it, he decided not to do such a tasteless thing. He immediately sent someone to invite Rongyue Tianlan. Before the person who was sent out walked out of the courtyard, a person in plain clothes walked in. Is she awake? It's time to heal again. The word awake was swallowed back when he saw the people in the courtyard and the doll piled up in half. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. This person was naturally Rongyue Tianlan. He stood there in a blue brocade robe like an orchid tree. The whole courtyard seemed to light up with him. Tianlan, come in and talk. The South Sky Emperor's voice sounded from inside the room. His tone was different from his usual calm and steady tone. Rongyue Tianlan didn't know why, but his heart sank. He strode in. Before he could see the layout of the room clearly, a letter was stuffed into his hand. The South Sky Emperor's voice was even more hurried. Open it and see. There was only one letter. There was only a short line on it. Meet in front of the marriage pillar 12 days later. Annul the engagement. Although Ji Xinyu's words were not as beautiful as the current girl's, the strokes were very powerful. It had a free and easy style. Because the majority of the people on this continent were cultivators, voice transmission talismans were more common. Usually, voice transmission talismans were enough to communicate, so there were very few people who wrote ordinary letters. Rongyue Tian had known her for quite some time, but this was the first time she had seen her writing. Her words were elegant, and the words she left behind were concise and powerful, just like her style. It was rumored that Ji Xinyu was ignorant and incompetent, and couldn't even recognize a basket of words. Looking at the words she left behind, it was clear that this rumor was based on groundless accusations. Not only was Ji Xinyu good at martial arts, her handwriting was also very good. Rongyue Tian looked at the letter for a moment, then her gaze turned and landed on the doll on the bed. Her gaze paused for a moment, then she turned to ask the South Heaven Emperor, who had just finished reading the letter, what happened? The South Heaven Emperor paused. She has some misunderstandings towards me. She quarreled with me just now and left in a fit of pique. Rongyue Tianlan looked at him for a moment. Because of me? The South Heaven Emperor didn't expect him to be so sharp. He sighed and didn't deny it. Yes. His bright eyes fell on Rongyue Tian again. She was probably looking for you just now and saw you with Tianyue. Then she was ridiculed by her second sister in the Imperial Garden. Chapter 27:19. His bright eyes fell on Rongyue Tianlan again. She was probably looking for you just now and saw you with Tianyue. Then she was ridiculed by her second sister in the Imperial Garden, and the two sisters had a small conflict. After that, I talked to her for a while and advised her to let go since you two are not fated. Rongyue Tianlan turned and left. The South Heaven Emperor quickly chased after her. Where are you going? To find her. Her injuries haven't healed yet. It's dangerous for her to go to the Pillar of Marriage alone. Rongyue Tianlan said and disappeared. Only then did the South Heaven Emperor remember that there were indeed all kinds of monsters and spirits at the location of the Pillar of Marriage. It was an extremely dangerous place. If Ji Xinyu was not injured, she should be fine going there with Rongyue Tianlan, but if she went there alone, the South Heaven Emperor panicked and hurriedly picked up the sound-transmitting talisman to contact Ji Xinyu. As he expected, there was no response. She must have turned off the sound-transmitting talisman again. Helplessly, he could only contact the Purple Cloud sect leader. Unexpectedly, he couldn't reach the Purple Cloud sect leader either. He then contacted the Purple Cloud sect leader's eldest disciple, Feng Buji. Feng Buji told him that his master would be in seclusion for a month and couldn't be disturbed now. The South Heaven Emperor was even more anxious. He could only ask Feng Buji to contact Ji Xinyu and not let her go to the Pillar of Marriage alone. Feng Buji was silent for a moment, and his voice became cold. What did you do to her? Why did she do that? The South Heaven Emperor was speechless. Feng Buji's cold voice came again. Your Majesty, you have probably never treated her as your own daughter. That's why no matter how ridiculous the rumors are, you have never used your power to clear her name. Yet she has always treated you as her own father. Initially, she had some minor injuries on her body, but when she heard about the Flood Dragon disaster, she rushed back immediately. I think she wanted to share your burden and fight the Flood Dragon. The South Heaven Emperor's head buzzed. He suddenly remembered that Rongyue Tianlan had said several times that the flood dragon was killed by another person. He didn't believe it at all. He even thought that Rongyue Tianlan didn't want to take the credit. Now it seemed that it was true. Could it be that the real dragon slayer was his daughter? Thinking of his daughter's skills later, the South Heaven Emperor thought more and more about this possibility. The regret in his heart was overwhelming. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but the other side had already hung up the voice transmission talisman. While the South Heaven Emperor was in a daze, there seemed to be some movement outside. He faintly heard the guards at the gate call out something about Her Highness the Princess. He was overjoyed, thinking that Ji Xinyu had returned. He strode out of the hall. Xinyu? The one who fluttered into the courtyard was not Ji Xinyue, but the little princess Ji Tianyue. When she saw her imperial father, she was stunned for a moment. Then, when she saw the plush dolls in the courtyard, she was stunned for a second time. Imperial father, you also came to see my third elder sister? Wow, so many beautiful dolls. Father, did you buy this for Tianyu? Ji Tianyue pounced on the maids who were standing in a row in the courtyard with dolls in their hands. She began to comment, this one has big eyes, that one looks delicate, this one has even proportions. In just a moment she had already picked out 4. She held them in her arms and smiled sweetly at the South Heaven Emperor. Father, these are enough for me. The South Sky Emperor was annoyed. Tianyu, this is for your sister. Put it down first. Third sister? Third sister also likes this? That's impossible, right? She's already so old. Chapter 27:20. Ji Tianyue was surprised, but then she said carelessly, it's okay. Third sister has always loved me. She will give me anything I like without hesitation. These dolls are the same. She will definitely give me the best. She walked inside. Brother Rongyue is helping third sister heal, right? I'll go in and take a look. The South Sky Emperor was furious. His little daughter took it for granted to steal other people's things, especially her sister's. While he was in a daze, Ji Tianyue ran out of the room like a whirlwind. Father, I heard the maid say that third sister left? And brother Rongyue went after her? Is it true? Her tone could be called a reproach. The South Sky Emperor frowned. So what? It's dangerous for your sister to go out alone. Before he finished, Ji Tianyue interrupted him. How can they do that? They have been together for a long time. What if brother Rongyue likes her again? Her little face was red, and her little fists were clenched tightly. She was obviously angry. The South Sky Emperor's face darkened. They were originally engaged. If he likes your sister again, it's understandable. Ji Tianyue's little face was even redder. But they wanted to break off the engagement? How can they like her again? Father, you must stop them. You promised Tianyue last night that you would help her. Shut up. Ji Tianyue was interrupted by the South Sky Emperor. The South Sky Emperor's face was as cold as ice. Little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Come, take the little princess back to the Crystal Moon Palace to reflect. Without my permission, she is not allowed to leave the palace. Little Princess Ji Tianyue, who always wanted the stars in the sky and not the moon, was stunned. The pillar of marriage of the Fanine continent was located on the highest peak of the Misty Mountain in the central area. The South Sky clan was about 5,000 miles away from the Misty Mountain. If one used flying techniques, it would take 3 days. If one used lightness techniques, it would take 10 days. The Misty Mountain was a very strange mountain. It didn't allow any techniques to go up the mountain. Otherwise, a barrier would pop up on the mountain and directly eject people. So if one wanted to go up the mountain, whether they flew or ran, it was the same. They all had to climb. Some people said that the Misty Mountain was a sacred mountain because it had the most magical and solemn object in the Fanine continent, the Pillar of Marriage. The most amazing function of the marriage fate pillar was that every man and woman who got engaged in the Fanine continent would have their names appear on the marriage fate pillar in pairs. It would appear automatically and no couple would miss out on it. There were tens of millions of people on the Sanskrit Sound continent. The names of tens of millions of people rotated on the pillar, but they were never confused. What was even stranger was that only when both parties were present and placed their hands on the marriage pillars would their names appear clearly. Once the engagement was successfully annulled, the name on it would automatically disappear. It was very magical. There were also some who said that the Misty Mountain was a demonic mountain, because there were all kinds of demonic beasts and monsters on the mountain. There were often demonic mists rising from the mountain, and within the mists were all kinds of man-eating insects. Once surrounded by this demonic mist, a person would be gnawed into a pile of white bones in the blink of an eye, without even a trace of flesh and blood left. In order to break the engagement in front of the pillar of marriage, one had to pass the test of the pillar of marriage itself. The test of the pillar of marriage was targeted at people. Chapter 27-21. In order to break the engagement in front of the pillar of marriage, one had to pass the test of the pillar of marriage itself. The test of the pillar of marriage was targeted at people. It was said that there were many different kinds of tests. Some were very easy and some were very abnormal. Therefore there was no previous experience to speak of. It all depended on one's luck. If it was easy, everything would be fine. If it was abnormal, one might lose one's life. Because of this, once the people of the Fanian continent got engaged, they would not break the engagement easily. If a man was not satisfied with his fiancée, he could take in a bunch of concubines. Concubines would not be on the pillar of marriage. If they were not satisfied, they could divorce them at any time. Therefore, even if the men were not satisfied with their fiancée, they would just put up with it. They did not want to come to the Misty Mountain to look for trouble. As for the women who were not satisfied with their fiancés, their martial arts were all fancy and impractical. They could not fight their way up the Misty Mountain alone. Therefore, if the man did not want to come, the marriage could not be broken. They could only follow the original agreement and marry when they were of age. Therefore, although the pillar of marriage had been standing in the Misty Mountain for hundreds of thousands of years, there were very few men and women who successfully came to it to break the engagement. There was not even one pair in hundreds of years. In a deep valley, maple trees covered the valley. The autumn wind blew the maple leaves red. The red color of the valley was like the morning sun being pulled down and spread into the valley. The whole valley was dyed in layers of red. In the depths of the maple forest in the valley, there was a unique small wooden house. The house was surrounded by maple trees. In spring and summer, the maple leaves were green, and so was the small wooden house. In autumn, the maple leaves were red, and the small wooden house was hidden in red clouds like fire. Snow fell in the valley from the east, and the small wooden house was also covered in snow. In general, the small wooden house looked simple, but it was very good at hiding. Even if someone walked into the deep valley, they might not be able to find the small wooden house. Moreover, there was a formation boundary around the small wooden house, so no one could easily break in. There was a stream in front of the small wooden house. At this moment, the two sides of the stream were covered with a thick layer of red maple leaves. They were as soft as a crimson cushion. At night, the moonlight was like wine. At this moment, Ji Xinyue was lying on the cushion formed by nature. There was a wine gourd on her left, and a few plates of peanuts and edamame on her right. She took a sip of wine and ate a few peanuts and edamame, looking extremely lazy and content. Every time she returned to this little nest that only she knew about, she felt exceptionally relaxed. This was her home, a home where she could rest her soul and forget all the troubles outside. Looking at the clouds in the morning, listening to the pines in the evening. He completely relaxed himself. He rolled around in the meadow, took a bath in the stream, caught a fish barefoot in the water, hunted some game in the forest. He was as carefree as a living immortal. Although Ji Xinyu usually liked to wander around the Fanian continent as Xinyu, he would still return here once every 3 to 5 years, either to meditate or to live freely like an ordinary person. Of course, she wouldn't stay here for too long, at most a month. After all, it was too quiet here. Not a single person could be seen. If one stayed here for a long time, the bone-piercing loneliness would invade one's body, making it hard for one to sit or lie down. Thus one could only leave. Even so, she was still very relaxed every time she came back. This time he was especially relaxed, because she only planned to rest here for 3 days. Chapter 27-22. The injuries on her body had not healed, but after using 2 spells in succession last night, it did not affect her injuries much. At most, the fading scars and fish scales showed signs of worsening. However, the veins in her body were not affected much. Ji Xinyu did not care much about her body and appearance. Anyway, she was not prepared to marry again. Whether it was ugly or beautiful, it was something she could see. As long as she did not care, why should she care so much? Therefore, she was prepared to rest here for 3 days. After recuperating, she would use the flying spell and lightness skill alternately to go to Misty Mountain. According to her estimation, she could reach the foot of the mountain in 5 days. She would use another 2 days to climb the mountain and kill monsters. That would be enough time. Since she had already made a plan, she simply emptied her mind and drank freely. The wine was the red leaf wine that she had buried under the maple tree 3 years ago. It tasted as spicy as burning knives, but it was a little cooler than burning knives. After drinking it, it felt warm and comfortable. She was cautious in everything outside and almost never got drunk. Last night was an exception. That was because she did not know that the wine that Rongyue Tianlan brought would have such a strong after-effect. If she had known, she would not have drunk so much. Of course, she did not have so many scruples when drinking here. Getting drunk was a common thing. Anyway, no matter how drunk she was, no one would disturb her and no one would sneak up on her. Of course, no one knew what she was like when she was drunk. She did not know herself either. Because every time she was drunk, her mind was blank. When she woke up the next day, she did not know what she would do when she was drunk. She realized that she was not honest when she was drunk. Sometimes she clearly felt that she was lying on the bed in the small wooden house, but when she woke up she was on a tree, a stone, or even in a stream, and she was holding something in her arms, either a big stone or a wooden stick. The most frightening thing was that she was holding a long snake. Fortunately, when she was drunk, her sleeping position was a little strange when she woke up, and nothing major happened. What happened after she was drunk last night? Where did Rongyue Tianlan find her and carry her back to Nantian Palace? Originally, she had rushed to Rongyue Tianlan's place this morning to ask for an explanation. But after seeing that scene and after everything that had happened, she felt that those questions were no longer important. It didn't matter if she asked or not. She drank the wine one mouthful at a time. Her watery eyes gradually became misty and her cheeks turned red from the alcohol. The familiar feeling of dizziness grew stronger and stronger. The stars and moon in the sky were spinning, and the maple trees around her were spinning. Chapter 27-23. This kind of wine tasted soft, but it was extremely strong. Even with his alcohol tolerance, he would be knocked out if he drank an entire jar. But last night, Ji Xinyu drank half a jar. And it was under the condition that she was already drunk. By the time he realized it, the jar of wine had already been emptied. So he knew that she couldn't hold on for more than a quarter of an hour and would definitely be knocked out after that. So after he brought her down the mountain, she had a strong personality and probably didn't want anyone to find out her secret, so she simply said goodbye to him, turned around and walked away quickly, avoiding him like he was the plague. After all, he was still worried about her, so he followed her from afar. Firstly, he wanted to see if she would fall, and secondly, there were many fierce beasts in the mountain. If she fell on the road, she might be eaten by some wolf, worm, tiger, or leopard. He expected her to be drunk, but he didn't expect her to be so drunk, and even more so, he didn't expect her to be so charmingly naive after being drunk. His original plan was to send her out of the mountain, and if she didn't fall, he would let her be. If she fell, he would send her back to the palace quickly, and it wouldn't take much time. But Ji Xinyu didn't play by the rules. Even when she was drunk, she could still be drunk in a unique way. At first, she walked in a straight line, her clothes fluttering, but after a while she began to walk in a swaying Z-step, her body twisting like a willow in the wind. She even giggled, her laughter was as innocent as a silver bell. After that, she even began to hum a little tune, singing rhythmically and rhythmically. She was so drunk that she didn't even remember the lyrics of the song. He listened to her singing all the way and he finally knew that she actually had a good voice. When she sang to her heart's content, she even danced under the moonlight. Because she was drunk, she also staggered while dancing, but her waist was softer than a willow, and her limbs were like the wings of a swan. When she danced, she was like a swan under the moonlight, full of a unique charm. Rongyue Tianlan was a famous musician, and had a deep understanding of singing and dancing. He never thought that a person could dance like this, attracting the attention of a picky person like him. In this aspect, she was actually a genius. The dance she danced while drunk was original, her movements didn't follow any rules, but it was strangely harmonious and strangely beautiful. At that moment, Rongyue Tianlan even wanted to take out her flute and play a song for her. However, he suppressed this thought. In front of him, Ji Xinyu had always been calm and collected, with the confidence of a man. After getting drunk, she finally revealed the naivety and innocence of a little girl, which amused him. His heart inexplicably softened, as if some kind of ripple was slowly spreading. Later, he found that she was not going down the mountain. She was running in a crooked direction towards a remote cave. Rongyue Tianlan naturally sensed that the cave was the lair of a unicorn. She was undoubtedly seeking her own death by bumping into it like this. On one hand, he secretly rejoiced that he had followed the right person. On the other hand, he took 2 steps closer to her. The Dharma seal in his sleeves was activated. He was prepared to save the person as soon as he realized that something was wrong. He thought that with Ji Xinyu drunk like this she would rush in without thinking. However, he didn't expect that when she was about to reach the entrance of the cave, she would pull out her majestic machete. Her machete didn't look very special. Although it was made of meteoric iron, it wasn't considered a divine weapon, at most it was a sharp weapon. Chapter 27-24. However, it was this saber that was ranked second in the weapon manual written by the martial artists of the Fannin continent. In the weapon manual, this saber was called Azura saber. Many famous experts had fallen under this saber. It was rumored that when this saber appeared, wind and thunder would erupt, and the sun and moon would lose their light. It was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Every time it appeared, it would inevitably cut off someone's life. The martial arts world passed down this saber as if it was a god, but only Rongyue Tianlan understood. What made this saber so awe-inspiring was not the saber itself, but the person holding the saber. It was because the person holding the saber was extremely powerful that this ordinary saber was able to squeeze into the weapon manual. Shen Yu's name was much more famous than her own. He was the solitary deity ranked second in the martial arts world. Who would have thought that this famous deity was Princess Ji Xinyu, who had been demoted to be useless? Rongyue Tianlan knew that once her second identity was announced, it would probably cause a huge uproar in the entire Fannin continent. On this continent, this kind of expert was a talent that every clan fought over. It was said that the emperors of the four clans tried every possible way to extend all kinds of olive branches to this deity. Rongyue Tianlan's information was not ordinary. He also knew that the South Heaven Emperor had sent people to contact this deity Xinyu many times, promising all kinds of generous conditions that could kill people to poach him under his command. Ji Xinyu was probably afraid of exposing her identity in her own clan, so she had always ignored the olive branch that the South Heaven Emperor extended. This made the South Heaven Emperor feel that this person was cold and aloof, and wanted to rope him in more. It was said that in order to rope in this expert, he had worried so much that his hair turned white. If he knew that this Xinyu was the incarnation of the daughter he looked down on the most, what kind of expression would he have? He was actually looking forward to that day, but since Ji Xinyu did not want to make it public, she must have her own reasons. Naturally, he would not expose her. He saw Ji Xinyu break into the cave with the saber, and Rongyue Tianlan naturally followed. He saw that Ji Xinyu's vision was not good because she was drunk, so she walked in the cave and directly kicked the sleeping unicorn, successfully provoking this big guy to go crazy. Even if Ji Xinyu was drunk, her reaction was not slow, and she was not sent flying by the unicorn's claw. However, she had drunk too much and was half a beat slower during the fight. If Rongyue Tianlan had not secretly made a move to slow down the unicorn's movements by 3 beats, Ji Xinyu would probably have been torn apart alive. Such intense movements shook the alcohol in Ji Xinyu's body. She vomited in the middle of the battle, directly spraying the unicorn's face. This caused the unicorn, who loved cleanliness, to immediately break down. It actually ignored Ji Xinyu's large blade and directly used its claws to wipe its face. Not only did it wipe once, it even wiped a second time. Thus, the filth on its face was wiped clean, but its throat was also slit by the large saber and it lost its little life. After the unicorn crashed to the ground, the drunk Ji Xinyu also sat on the ground. In the dark night, her pair of hazy eyes were abnormally bright. She was in a daze on the ground for a moment. Then she actually staggered to the side of the unicorn's corpse and did something that Yu Tianlan would never have thought of. She pried open the unicorn's hooves and then dove into the unicorn's chest. Yu Tianlan was dumbfounded. The unicorn loved cleanliness and had a body full of long fur, so its fur had always been as soft and clean as satin. Lying on such fur should not be uncomfortable, but this scene was still very shocking to the eyes. Chapter 27-25. A petite girl was lying in the arms of a long-haired beast. It was a classic Beauty and the Beast. Actually, because Ji Xinyu was very drunk, she showed her female appearance not long after she went down the mountain. Other than the clothes that were for men, every inch of her body was that of a woman. Her figure was very good, the places that should be protruding were protruding, and the places that should be perky were perky. Even if she was wearing a man's robe, the towering peaks in front of her chest could be seen. In her drunken state, she was probably afraid of the cold, so her body desperately squeezed into the unicorn's arms. Her little mouth was still mumbling, but it could be heard clearly. "Father, don't you love Xinyu anymore?" "Ugh, Xinyu." Rongyue Tianlan almost fell over. He never thought that she would actually treat the unicorn as her father. Her little face was filled with innocence and grievance, like a child who had yet to reach adulthood, longing for her parents' love. If she was sober, she would definitely not do this, and would not show such an expression that was similar to that of a little girl. But now that she was drunk, she spoke the truth after drinking, and she spoke the truth after drinking. She even took out a doll as if it was a treasure. "Father, look, I still have this doll. Father must love me very much in your heart, so you know that I like this. Father, can you buy another doll for Shinyu?" Her voice was delicate and tender, as if she was still that child who desperately wanted to be doted on by her parents. This scene was obviously very comical, but Rongyue Tianlan felt inexplicably sad. His heart that had always been hard seemed to have been cut open by someone, revealing the painful softness inside. She was drunk, so it was not a good idea to let her sleep in the arms of a dead unicorn. Rongyue Tianlan simply pulled her out of the unicorn's arms, then carried her in his arms and walked out directly. She was restless in his arms, and in a daze she began to hug his waist again, calling him father and mumbling for him to hug her again. Rongyue Tianlan did not know whether to laugh or cry. This was the first time in his life that he was called father. Although he was more than 1,000 years older than her, if he had married early, he might have been able to give birth to a daughter of this age. He really wanted to tell her that he was not her father, but her fiancé. However, arguing with a drunk person was undoubtedly asking for trouble. Seeing how much she craved fatherly love, he might as well pretend to be her father and gently comfort her and coax her. After they entered the city, he even bought her a big doll to hold. She was indeed very happy. She even leaned up and kissed him on the cheek. She hugged his neck, and the smile on her face was as bright as the moonlight in the sky. Her soft lips touched his face, causing ripples in his heart. He had the urge to fiercely kiss her back. Fortunately, he suppressed this thought in time and brought her directly into an inn. She was still wearing a man's robe, so it was inappropriate to send her back like this, so he had to think of a way to change her clothes. Rongyue Tianlan was still a gentleman in this aspect. If he didn't have the intention to marry the other party, he wouldn't look at the other party's body. Even though he had been treating Ji Xinyu's injuries for the past few days, using a secret technique on her abdomen every day, it was still through her clothes. After he entered the inn, he used a spell to conceal her appearance. Then he took out a long dress from her storage space and asked the owner of the inn to put it on for her. Then he brought her back to the palace and sent her back to her Jingxinyuan. Chapter 27-26. She had been hugging the doll, as obedient as the doll, making people reluctant to put it down. Rongyue Tianlan was actually quite conflicted. The moment he saw Ji Tianyue, the woman's figure that had been hazy in his mind suddenly became clear, and her appearance was highly similar to Ji Tianyue's. Especially that pair of crystal-clear eyes, they were exactly the same. He felt as if lightning had struck his heart. He didn't expect that the woman he wanted to find in his heart was actually his fiancée's sister. Ever since he returned to this continent, fragments of that woman flashed through his mind from time to time, such as that pair of clear eyes, that breathtaking dance, that innocent and unaffected personality. They were all shockingly similar to Ji Tianyue's. This made a series of lightning strikes flash through his heart. He originally came back with two goals. One was to break off the engagement with his fiancée, and the other was to find the girl in his heart. He thought that there was still a long way to go to find that girl. After all, in the vast sea of people, it was harder than ascending to the heavens to find a person whose face was blurred. He didn't expect to find her so quickly. At that moment, he didn't know how happy he was, and it was also the first time he was so agitated, directly leading people to find the South Sky Emperor. Fortunately, he still had some rationality. He felt that Ji Tianyue was still young, and he had an engagement, so it was not appropriate for him to tell the truth, so he planned to take it slow, first saying that he wanted to guide her in martial arts, and then come up with other plans. Of course, since he had identified Ji Tianyue as the girl in his life, he naturally didn't want to take her as a disciple. In this world, a relationship between master and disciple was not allowed. He didn't want to find a stumbling block for himself. The joy of finding the girl in his heart made him forget about Ji Tianyue for a moment. After all, the two of them had already agreed to break off the engagement after Ji Tianyue's injuries were healed. He should not owe her anything as long as he did his best to heal her. But after all, he had delayed Ji Tianyue's youth. He even planned to find a suitable opportunity to introduce a few of his outstanding young friends in this world to her after successfully breaking off the engagement with Ji Tianyue. No one would dislike such an outstanding girl. She would definitely be able to find her destined other half. He had always comforted himself like this and had always done so. He felt that this was the most rational and appropriate way. He even gave himself a thumbs up in his heart for thinking this way. However, when he watched Ji Tianyue dance in the palace, he couldn't help but notice Ji Tianyue's expression. She had been hiding her emotions very well, so he couldn't see anything. But when she turned around and left quietly, his heart inexplicably sank. It was as if a small weight had fallen on him. At that time he even had the urge to chase after her. Later on he brought Ji Tianyue out. Firstly, it was to celebrate the festival with her. Secondly, deep in his heart he wanted to find Ji Xinyue who had never returned. Her injuries had not healed yet. If she used her martial arts outside, she was afraid that it would worsen her injuries. He felt that he was acting out of humanitarian concern and did not see anything wrong with it. As expected, he bumped into her at the foot of Moon-Gazing Peak. Her relationship with Rongyue Tianhuan was clearly not bad. The interaction between the two of them gave him a strange feeling. He had never thought that this cousin of his was an eyesore, but after everything that had happened on Moon-Gazing Peak, he had the urge to make this cousin disappear. The interaction between Ji Xinyu, Rongyu and Tianhuan seemed particularly disharmonious in his eyes. This emotion was a little strange and he couldn't figure out what it was. Chapter 27-28. If not for the fact that Ning Xuema had been forced by Shui Yilan to disguise herself, he would have been able to find her. However, opening the heavenly eye consumed a lot of willpower. Opening it once consumed more than half of his willpower, and he would need to cultivate for a year to recover it. Therefore he did not use this method often. He had only used it twice since he learned it. This time, in order to find Ji Xinyu, he opened it again. The result was disappointing. He did not find anything. There were only two reasons for this situation. First, she had changed her appearance and her aura. Second, she was hiding in some ancient enchantment, and this enchantment had the ability to block everything. Among the people Rong Yuishanlin knew, only Shinjuli knew such an abnormal enchantment. Shinjuli was probably fishing with Ning Xuema on his Xiaoyao Island, so he probably did not have the time to come to this world to join in the fun. Therefore, the second possibility was eliminated and only the first was left. It seemed like this girl was very familiar with Che Qingjia's transformation. Furthermore, this transformation of her aura was a relatively advanced spell. She really didn't care about her body at all. Rong Yuishanlin was angry, but he had no other choice. Opening the heavenly eye consumed more than half of his willpower, and he could not even summon the strength to ride the cloud. He could only rest for the time being and recover his willpower first. The best and fastest way to recover his willpower was to find a secluded place to clear all distracting thoughts and meditate. He was not willing to go to Nantian Palace now because there were still a lot of troublesome things waiting for him there, and he might not be able to calm down. After thinking about it, he thought of Moon-Admiring Peak. This place was not ordinary secluded, and no one would come to disturb him. The spiritual chi was abundant and it was a good place to meditate. Of course, to be safe he still called someone over. That person had not arrived yet, so he temporarily drank a little wine here. The moon in the sky was as big as a disc, and the moon was bright while the stars were dim. The moonlight of the 16th century was picturesque. Rongyu Tianlan drank a mouthful of wine while facing the moon. Ji Xinyu's figure flashed across her mind, and the memories of her drinking and chatting with her last night flashed across her mind. Her heart shook slightly. Other than Shinjuli, this was the first time he had met such a bosom friend. If it wasn't for this marriage contract, he and she might have become best friends, right? He didn't know why, but when he thought about his best friend he thought about Yunxi. Yunxi was his only confidant on the Tianxi continent. Of course, in his heart he automatically ignored the gender of this confidant. His feelings for Yunxi were slightly weaker than his feelings for Shinjuli, but he still treated her as a good friend. However, they were only good friends. He never had any other thoughts about Yunxi. However, he vaguely felt that Ji Xinyue's position in his heart was different from Yunxi's. But he couldn't tell what the difference was. Perhaps it was because she used to be his fiancée in name, so there was a strange feeling in her heart. Just as he was pondering, there was a slight breeze in the distance, and a person floated down. Eighth cousin brother. It was Rongyu Tianhuan. Rongyu Tianlan raised his cup at him. Come and sit. Rongyu Tianhuan did not stand on ceremony and sat across from him. Chapter 27-29. Rongjuishan Huan didn't stand on ceremony and sat opposite him. Looking at the wine gourd in his hand, his eyes lit up. "Eighth cousin, what good wine is this? I want a drink too." Rongjuishan Lan said, "Bring your cup over." Rongjuishan Huan scratched his head. "Eighth cousin, I've never liked to bring those odds and ends. Alas, it's a pity that Xinyu isn't here. Otherwise he would have prepared a cup for me." He stared at the wine gourd again. "Aren't you also drinking from the bottle? Bring it over and let me drink a few mouthfuls." His handsome face showed a rare melancholy. "I feel that there's some fire in my heart. I need to use wine to quench it." Rongjuishan Lan looked up at him and showed a rare concern. "What's the fire in your heart?" Rongjuishan Huan looked at him like a searchlight. "You sent Xinyu off last night. Why didn't you come up?" What happened?" Rongjuishan Lan frowned slightly and asked calmly, "What can happen between him and me? He looked righteous and obviously didn't do anything bad." Rongjuishan Huan scratched his head again and felt that he was thinking too much. He muttered, "This? Then why didn't you come back? The little princess you brought is really noisy. She kept crying and even hurt her own leg just to let you hug her. In the end you didn't come back. The little girl was so wrong that she cried." Rongjuishan Lan raised his eyebrows. "She hurt her own leg? Of course. Did you think I was the one who kowtowed to her? I'm not interested in this kind of little flower. Right, eighth cousin, I think the little girl should have fallen in love with you. You're also very good to her. Are you guys?" Hee. Rongjuishan Huan's last hee sounded a little wretched. Rongjuishan Lan glanced at him and didn't comment on his question. He only said one sentence. "She's still an underage little girl." Well, it was too early to talk about this. Rongjuishan Huan put this matter aside for the time being. He looked up at the moon in the sky and suddenly sighed. "Eighth cousin, I found that I've fallen in love." Rongjuishan Lan knew that this cousin had always been dissolute. It wasn't strange for him to say this. "Which girl did you fancy this time?" Rong Huan shook his head and said with a sad face, "It's not a girl this time." Rong raised her eyebrows and looked at him, waiting for him to continue. In the end he said an earth-shattering sentence. I'm probably a homosexual. I like a man and can't forget him for a moment." Rong Yuetian's heart skipped a beat. She could vaguely guess who he liked. "Who is that man?" "Xinyu?" Rong Huan spat out these two words. The wine gourd in Rong Yuishanlan's hand fell to the ground. Rong Huan was quick to react. He caught the wine gourd and said dejectedly, "You're also surprised, right?" Even I am surprised by this. But this is the truth. Every time I see him, my heart beats wildly and I want to treat him well. Sometimes I even want to hug him. Seeing him is not the normal kind of nervousness, but every time I see him, I long to see him again. I didn't have this kind of feeling towards the beauties I admired before. Do you think I have fallen in love? At that time I wasn't sure myself. Because of this, I specially went to find those beautiful women and wanted to take them with me to admire the moon. However, those women who had moved my heart before, I no longer had the same feelings with them as before. Chapter 27-30. Rong Huan cried miserably, "Eighth cousin, look, I'm gay, right? If my father knew about this, he would beat me to death." He raised his hand and drank a big mouthful of wine. "What should I do?" Rong Lan looked at him for a moment, then got up and said lightly, "You're not gay, you just lack women. Go back and find another woman. Don't think about that Xinyu, he's not suitable for you. If you reveal your thoughts, I don't know if your father will beat you to death, but Xinyu will definitely beat you to death. Your friendship will end here as well." Rong Huan shivered. "Really?" Rong Lan said seriously, "Of course it can't be more real. Tianheng, repent and be saved. You're the only child in your family. If you're gay, your father will probably go crazy." Rong Huan shivered again. This was really possible. After all, his father was a famous hot-tempered prince. He had a fiery temper and would explode at the slightest touch. He cried miserably and looked at his eighth cousin for help. "Then what should I do?" Rong Lan gave him a few words. "Salad. Repent and be saved." Rong Huan lowered his head like a frosted eggplant. "If I listen to my father, I'll probably marry that Princess Ji Xinyu that you don't want." Rong Lan froze. The scene of Rong Huan and Ji Xinyu bowing to heaven and earth flashed in his mind. He glanced at him coldly and said, "You don't match her, you don't have to think about this. Ji Xinyu was so outstanding, she must find an absolutely outstanding man to match her." Rong Lan went through all the candidates in his heart these 2 days, but he couldn't find a suitable candidate. He selfishly felt that no one could match such an outstanding girl, and Rongyue Tianhuan, this dandy, was even worse. Such a beautiful flower couldn't be stuck on cow dung. Rongyue Tianlan, who had always pursued perfection, felt unbearable when he thought of that scene. Rongyue Tianhuan wanted to say more, but was interrupted by Rongyue Tianlan. "Tianheng, I'll give you this gourd of wine, but you have to guard me for an entire day." Rongyue Tianhuan finally saw that Rongyue Tianlan's complexion wasn't too good. After drinking so much wine, his handsome face was still somewhat pale. "What's wrong with you?" Rongyue Tian patted his shoulder. "Don't let anything disturb me while I'm meditating. I'll leave my safety in your hands. Can you do it?" Rongyue Tianheng was still very loyal and immediately puffed out his chest. "Yes. Don't worry, with me as your protector, even if a dragon flies over, I can beat it away." Rongyue Tian sat in meditation. His posture when meditating was exceptionally free and easy, different from any other way of meditating in this world. A faint light flashed from his body. He sat in the light like a phoenix young master undergoing nirvana. Rongyue Tianheng squatted at the side and watched for a while. Suddenly he thought of a problem. He still hadn't asked whether that Princess Ji Xinyue was beautiful or not. Also, his cousin said that he was not compatible with the princess. Did he think that his cousin was outstanding and the princess was not compatible with him? I didn't think that I had such an important position in my cousin's heart. In that instant, Rongyue Tianhuan reached perfection. Ji Xinyue didn't expect that her engagement with Rongyue Tianlan would be so popular during the engagement, adding countless gossip topics to the continent and entertaining the public for 3,000 years. The cancellation of the engagement could also shock the people and make the whole world know about it. Chapter 2731. Princess Ji Xinyu of the Nantian clan and Her Highness Rongyue Tianlan of the Eastern Sky clan were going to break off their engagement in front of the Pillar of Marriage on the 24th day of the 28th year of the Fanine calendar. No one knew why this news spread, but it spread like a virus throughout the entire Fanine continent. Soon it spread to every corner. Not only did the officials and nobles of various clans know about this news, even the peddlers on the streets were spreading the news everywhere. People were guessing when these two people would arrive and how they would arrive. Ji Xinyu's outstanding appearance at the palace banquet a few days ago had stunned many people. Naturally, these deeds of hers also spread throughout the Fanine continent. Everyone knew that she was originally a top beauty. Although she was wearing a veil at that time, everyone could already tell that she was a beauty, and a super beauty at that. The more veil she wore, the more it aroused people's curiosity. There were already people guessing her facial features based on the undulation of the veil. There were even busybodies who painted her according to the rumors. These portraits were naturally of a variety, but it aroused people's interest even more. They wanted to know what this princess looked like. Originally, this princess's whereabouts were unknown. No one knew her true appearance and no one knew her whereabouts. Now, people got the news that she was going to Misty Mountain to break off the engagement. This news was like a shot of chicken blood, igniting everyone's nerves. Countless people rushed to Misty Mountain to see this big show. Therefore, when Ji Xinyu came out of her peaceful little nest that day, her ears were filled with this news. People were discussing it when she was eating, people were discussing it when she was drinking tea, and even people were discussing it when she was on the road. Because there were many mysterious factors about her and she was a typical example of a salted fish turning over a new leaf, people gossiped about her even more than Rongyue Tianlan. Many people took those strange portraits and compared them everywhere, looking for her hidden among the common people as if they were searching for a treasure. There were accurate rumors that this princess and Her Highness Rongyue had broken off their relationship and the two of them would come separately. At this time, people were guessing that this princess would appear at the foot of Misty Mountain in the most eye-catching manner. The scene must be amazingly beautiful. The princess was already a monarch god, so the most eye-catching appearance was to step on a cloud and slowly descend. Many people rushed to the Misty Mountain early in order to catch a glimpse of the peerless beauty of the princess. There were also some people who were on their way to the Misty Mountain. Some big sects that were good at scheming felt that this princess would definitely come from the sky, so they set up all kinds of hidden sentries in the sky, wanting to see her as soon as possible. There were also some people who thought that the princess would probably use the lost snow-treading divine skill, which was known as the traceless snow-treading divine skill. Therefore, every road leading to the Misty Mountain had been set up with secret sentries to secretly observe the figures that were flying past, an inescapable net. In order to watch the fun, they even set up an inescapable net. It could only be said that the people of the Fanine continent were actually very free. In order to get first-hand gossip, they were willing to go all out. There were still 5 days until the agreed date. Regardless of whether the princess wanted to travel by air or land, she should have already set off by now. Those spies began to become extremely nervous, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Their eyes were like searchlights as they searched for the princess's figure. Chapter 2732. And at this moment, Ji Xinyu, who was supposed to be rushing along in a flashy fashion, was leisurely leaning against a carriage. The carriage was pulled by 4 wind-chasing leopards, running on the wide road. Its speed was no slower than anyone running with Qinggong. This carriage was a common means of transportation for the commoners of the Fanine continent who were slightly wealthy. More, faster, better, and more economical were its pronouns. Xinxia heroes were everywhere in this world. Those who had skills generally used flying, and those who couldn't use Qinggong. Even if women's Qinggong and flying skills were not good, those who were really rich had their own luxurious cars. When they really needed to go out, they wouldn't use a carriage. Therefore, those who took the carriage were mostly commoners. Ji Xinyu's carriage was of the highest quality. It was very comfortable to sit in, and it was also the fastest among all the carriages. Most importantly, there were very few people in the carriage with her. There were only 3 people, 3 young heroes. These 3 young heroes probably didn't go out often, and had been in a state of excitement for the past few days. What they talked about the most was Ji Xinyu and Rongyue Tianlan breaking off the engagement. They made all kinds of guesses along the way. Did you see that? I saw a spy squatting on a tree at the corner. He was probably looking for Princess Ji Xinyu. These people are really stupid. Someone like Princess Ji Xinyu would definitely take the heavenly road. How could she run on land? It's useless to guard her. That's right. I heard that this princess is unparalleled in beauty. She can make people's souls fly away with just one look. I hope we can see her appear this time. Even if we can only see her from afar, I can die without regrets. If we get there early, we should be able to see her, right? After all, there are 2 ways to enter the Misty Mountain. She will definitely take one of them. We have to make this carriage run faster. Look, all the carriages along the way are running in the same direction. They must be going to see the show. If we get there late, I'm afraid we can't even squeeze through the mountain gate. We can't even see the princess shadow. Wouldn't it be a waste to run so far? That's right. Then let's make the carriage run faster. One of the youths went to urge the carriage owner outside. Ji Xinyu had been silently resting with her eyes closed. The attention of the 3 young heroes was focused on the outside of the carriage. From time to time, they would exclaim in surprise, saying that they saw a certain hero using his Qinggong to fly past them. Occasionally, they would exclaim in surprise that they saw a certain expert flying past them in the sky. With so many people rushing to the front, the 3 people in the carriage became more and more impatient. From time to time, they urged the carriage owner to hurry up. After yelling for 2 days, the 3 young heroes were finally a little tired. They were undoubtedly well informed about the outside world, and the voice-transmitting talismans on their waists would occasionally transmit messages to their friends. From these telepathic messages, the 3 young heroes knew that no one had found the whereabouts of the princess, and no one had even seen the whereabouts of Rongyue Tianlan. There were still 2 days left before the appointed time. Logically speaking, the 2 of them should have set off no matter what. Now that the 2 of them had disappeared, could it be that the 2 of them had suddenly thought things through and did not want to break off the engagement? Had they been fooled? The 3 young heroes were speculating one after another, expressing all sorts of opinions. The 3 young heroes' voices were filled with fear of being tricked, and one of them finally noticed Ji Xinyu, who was napping in the corner. Chapter 2733. One of them finally noticed Ji Xinyu, who was napping in the corner, and couldn't help but ask, "Brother, what do you think is going on with this princess? Is she walking in the air or on land? Or is she using some kind of earth escape technique?" Ji Xinyu slowly opened her eyes and slowly said, "Maybe the princess is sitting in the carriage like all of you?" When she said this, the 3 young heroes looked at her angrily. How is that possible? How could the princess sit in the carriage? That's too uncool. Your guess is too ridiculous. Exactly. Even if the princess wants to sit in a carriage, she would definitely sit in the palace's wind-chasing carriage. Why would she lower herself to sit in a carriage? It's too ridiculous. Too ridiculous. Ji Xinyu touched her nose, didn't say anything else, and closed her eyes to rest. In the beginning she had indeed used the flight technique, but not in the appearance of Ji Xinyu, but in the appearance of Xinyu. Naturally, no one would notice her flying in the air. She even met a few of her friends in the Jianghu and exchanged a few words with them. After flying for a day and a half, she landed according to her plan. Originally she wanted to use Qinggong to fly, but she suddenly saw the most luxurious inn. She was also a little tired, so she just sat in the carriage. Along the way she looked like she was resting with her eyes closed, but it was actually a kind of meditation, slowly recovering her strength between breaths. She calculated that with this carriage she would have enough time to reach the foot of Misty Mountain, so she stayed in the carriage with peace of mind. Other than the three young heroes who were a little noisy, there was no other dissatisfaction. Of course, when she sat in the carriage she didn't use the identity of Xinyu or Ji Xinyu, but an ordinary man's identity. Even her current appearance was very ordinary, the kind that you wouldn't be able to find if you threw her into a crowd. This kind of her naturally didn't attract the interest of the other young heroes, and they also didn't disturb her, letting her have a lot of peace and quiet. Her answer just now made the three of them thunderstruck, and they directly classified her as a stinky brat without any imagination, and didn't talk to her anymore. Ji Xinyu thought that she would arrive at her destination without any trouble, but she didn't expect to meet a robbery on such a short journey. The robber fell from the sky, and with a bang he fell in front of the carriage and was almost stepped on by a leopard pulling the carriage. Fortunately, the robber reacted quickly, and jumped onto the shaft of the carriage, shouting, "Robbery!" That sound was like a clap of thunder, shaking the entire carriage. The coachman almost fell off the carriage. Ji Xinyu's eyes slightly opened, and the other three young heroes in the same carriage all jumped up. The three young heroes were not afraid to die, and they were not afraid of trouble, and they all rushed out ready to fight. Outside the carriage there were endless sounds of shouting and cursing. After a while the carriage, the robber use and use Xinyu's ates, t the yeas use Xinyu's yuet. You use misty you no teat. You. After saying this, the robber kicked open the carriage's door, and prepared to stretch and enjoy himself in the carriage. Suddenly he saw Ji Xinyu and his eyes widened like copper bells. Fuck, there's actually another one here. Chapter 2734. He rolled up his sleeves and rushed over. Although the acupoints of the three youths were sealed, their mouths were not sealed. One of them was quite kind. "Brother inside, don't fight with him. He's a monarch immortal, we're not his match." Before he could finish his words, a body flew out of the carriage and landed on the side of the road with a loud bang, creating a large pit and raising a cloud of dust high up into the air. The three youths couldn't bear to watch and closed their eyes. "It's over." With such a big commotion, the youth who spoke like a madman was either dead or crippled. After they regained their freedom, they would first check on that person's injuries to see if he could be saved. One of the three young heroes was more hot-blooded. He closed his eyes and shouted, "If you want to rob the carriage, then just rob it. Why do you have to injure people? Do you think you can bully people just because you're a monarch immortal?" Before he could finish his words, he suddenly felt his body lighten. The acupoints that were sealed were unsealed. He was stunned and opened his eyes. Before he could react, a faint voice came from the carriage. "Do the three of you still want to ride the carriage?" It was the youth in the same carriage. The three young heroes jumped up from the ground and saw that the person lying in the pit by the roadside was the robber. The robber's face was purple and he stared into the carriage, hissing. He wanted to say something but he couldn't say anything. The ordinary youth in the same carriage was actually an expert. The three young heroes were both happy and shocked. They patted the dirt off their bodies and jumped into the carriage. The carriage sped up again. The three young heroes looked at Ji Xinyu, who was resting with her eyes closed, their eyes filled with disbelief. He actually beat a monarch immortal off the carriage so easily. What was the background of this ordinary youth in front of them? "We've been traveling together for many days but we still don't know your name. Can you tell us?" One of the young heroes started to speak in a genteel manner and even flicked his sleeves. Ji Xinyu spat out a word. "Hero Xinyu?" One of them shouted. The other youth immediately retorted, "Brother, don't randomly identify people. Although this young hero's surname is Shen, he might not be Hero Xinyu." The brother also reacted. Although the three of them had never seen Xinyu before, they had heard of his deeds. They had heard that his appearance was quite handsome, and the youth in front of them could at most be considered delicate and pretty. That elder brother was very forthright. He laughed and said, "It doesn't matter, even if it's not Hero Xinyu, it's still very powerful. Brother Shin, can we become friends?" Ji Xinyu smiled but did not answer. Instead, with a shake of her hand, she took out a chessboard. Do any of you know how to play chess? Isn't it boring to travel such a long distance? Why don't we play a few rounds? In this continent, all men probably knew how to play chess, especially those young heroes of the Jianghu, who treated chess as a compulsory course to keep up appearances. And these three young heroes were all chess experts. One of the youths immediately lifted his clothes and sat opposite Ji Xinyu. I'll go first. In terms of martial arts, the three of them might not be a match for this young man surnamed Shin, but in terms of chess? Playing chess requires talent. These three young heroes came from a family of chess masters. Although their martial arts were not up to standard, their chess skills were top-notch. One of them was even known as a chess genius and had never met a match since his debut, and the three brothers also happened to have the surname Qi. Ji Xinyu was too lazy to remember their names, so she called them First Young Master Qi, Second Young Master Qi, Third Young Master Qi. Chapter 2735. The Qi brothers' chess skills were reversed. Eldest young master was the worst, while third young master was the best. 2 hours later, first young master and second young master both lost with their faces covered in dirt. Third young master, who rarely played chess with others due to his status as the chess saint, finally couldn't help but play, sharpening his sword to regain his dignity. Third young master held on for a longer time. His face was red as he scratched his ears and cheeks for nearly an hour before he finally lost. Naturally, third young master was not convinced. It was chess, after all, one game couldn't determine the winner. Thus, when it was dark, third young master Qi lost 3 games in a row. Although the three Qi brothers had lost the game, their admiration for Ji Xinyu was like a rising tide, endless and unending. The three Qi brothers realized that although this young Master Shin looked ordinary, he had a very special temperament that made them want to get close to him but not dare to be rash. What was even rarer was that this young Master Shin was very forthright and knew a lot of things. He was an expert in rock paper scissors, wine tasting and chess, so he got along well with them. By dinner time, the three Qi brothers were already so familiar with her that there was no distinction between you and me. When there was wine, everyone drank it, and when there was food, everyone tasted it. They also called her Young Master Shin, instead of Young Master Shin. Because this place was not far from Misty Mountain, the three brothers calculated that they would arrive at the foot of the mountain at sunset tomorrow. Since there was plenty of time, the three brothers were not in a hurry. They discussed with Ji Xinyu and found an inn to stay for the night. It wouldn't be too late to get up early tomorrow morning. Ji Xinyu naturally agreed. She also needed to save her energy. There was still a tough battle to fight on the mountain tomorrow. The four of them found an inn. The third brother of the three brothers wanted to practice chess with her, and wanted to sleep with her, but she directly rejected him. So the three brothers shared one room and Ji Xinyu another. After dinner, the four of them returned to their rooms. Ji Xinyu was about to go to bed to practice when there was a knock on the door. She opened the door and saw that it was third young Master Qi. Young Master Shin, do you want to play another game? Third young Master Qi showed her the chessboard. It was rare for him to meet an opponent, so he was itching to play. Ji Xinyu also felt that it was not good for the body to cultivate right after eating, so she agreed. The two of them played a game in the room. It could not be denied that third young Master Qi was a genius in this aspect. After playing a few games with Ji Xinyu, he gradually grasped her methods and knack for playing chess. It would not be as easy for Ji Xinyu to win against him as it was in the beginning. The two of them played this game for a full 2 hours before the outcome was decided. Ji Xinyu won this game by 2 pieces. Third young Master Qi was not satisfied with his loss and wanted to play another round. Ji Xinyu yawned and said, I want to rest early tonight. Let's play a few more rounds in the car tomorrow. Third young Master Qi couldn't force her and could only give up. However, he made an agreement with Ji Xinyu. Boss Shin, let's make a deal. Tomorrow we'll kill to our heart's content. Ji Xinyu nodded. The time in the carriage was boring, and killing a few rounds could also train her thinking. It was rare to meet such a national-level opponent, so she nodded in agreement. Only then did third young Master Qi leave. Before he left, he suddenly said, Boss Shin, I feel a little strange tonight. It's like there's a pair of eyes staring at me from behind. It's making my hair stand on end. Do you have the same feeling? Ji Xinyu glanced at him. Was this brat trying to scare her? It seemed like he hadn't given up on his desire to sleep with her, so she smiled and suddenly stared at third young Master Qi's back. What's behind you? Chapter 2736. Third young Master Qi was so scared that his hair stood on end. He screamed and threw himself at Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu did not expect him to be so timid. She blocked him and knocked him down. Hey, you're too timid. Third young Master Qi almost hugged her leg. He trembled and said, I'm scared of ghosts the most. Behind, what's that? Ji Xinyu sighed. Just a cockroach. Third young Master Qi was speechless. He got up with cold sweat. After this scare, he no longer had any interest in playing chess. He took the chessboard and left. Ji Xinyu shook her head. She did not feel anything strange, nor did she feel that someone was watching her. With her makeup, even if her biological parents came, they would not be able to recognize her. Naturally, no one would be watching her. She closed the door, washed up, and went to bed. She closed her eyes and slowly immersed herself in cultivation. There was no moon tonight, only stars filled the sky. On the dark roof of the inn, a person sat alone. The autumn wind was cold and the autumn wind was cold. A red pot and a red stove were slowly brewing tea. This person was actually brewing tea in this kind of place. He was not an ordinary person. This person was obviously an expert in kung fu tea. His movements were as smooth as flowing water. After a while, the aroma of tea rose in spirals. That person seemed to be absent-minded tonight. The tea he brewed did not seem to be at the right temperature. After taking a sip, he put down the cup. He simply lay on the roof and rested his head on his hands to think. There was a breeze below, and a young master in black flew up. The young master who brewed tea was disturbed. He was a little unhappy, but he did not get up. He only supported his head with one arm and glanced at the young master in black. The young master in black had good martial arts. When he landed on the roof, he was like a falling leaf, not making a sound. The young master in black had a rare handsome appearance. After he jumped on the roof, he looked around. The young master in black was sitting lazily in front of him, but he did not seem to see him. After looking around the roof, he frowned and whispered, "Strange, there's no one here. Why do I feel like there's someone up there?" His nose twitched slightly and he was even more surprised. Did I smell wrong? I can actually smell the aroma of tea here. He turned his head and looked around, but he still didn't see anything. The faint fragrance of the tea seeped into one's heart and mind. The young master in black couldn't help but take a few more whiffs. It was late at night and the cold wind blowing on the roof was quite chilly. The black-clothed man shook his head slightly. I'm probably being paranoid. Who would come up to the roof to make tea in this kind of weather? This tea aroma is probably coming from the other guest rooms. It's not convenient to disturb them at this time. The young master tea maker lazily propped up his head and looked at him, muttering to himself. He had no intention of paying attention to him. This place was close to the Misty Mountain. Due to the large number of people who came to watch the fun, the originally deserted inn was a little overcrowded. There were all kinds of people and there was no lack of experts among them. For example, this black-robed young master should have reached the level of monarch god. Just as the black-clothed young master was about to jump down from the roof, his vision suddenly darkened. Ji Xinyu's figure flashed and landed on the roof. A slender sword in her hand pointed at the black-clothed young master's forehead. "Sir, what are you trying to do by peeping here?" The black-clothed young master used several movement techniques in succession, but he still couldn't avoid the sword in Ji Xinyu's hand. Surprise appeared in his eyes. "You are?" Ji Xinyu's current appearance was that of an ordinary person, but her movement techniques were not ordinary at all. Chapter 2737. The black-clothed man was quite knowledgeable, and he knew almost all the masters in the world. But Ji Xinyu was so unfamiliar. He had never seen her before. "Don't worry about who I am." Ji Xinyu was impatient. "What are you trying to do by peeping here?" The black-clothed man smiled bitterly. "I came up because I thought there was someone hiding up there, but I didn't expect it to be empty. I was about to go down when I bumped into you." He looked at Ji Xinyu again. "I see that your skills are extraordinary. Would you like to go down and let me treat you to a drink?" He wanted to make friends. Ji Xinyu came up to catch the peeping Tom, not to make friends. Besides, she also recognized who this person was. He was the only son of the West Sky Emperor, known as the Jade-Faced Azura, Shi Shuangqing. This person liked to make friends very much. He knew all the masters in the Sanning continent. He had a wide circle of friends, comparable to Rongyue Tianlan in the past. Ji Xinyu only wanted to keep a low profile and didn't want to use this ordinary identity to make friends, so she coldly refused. "No need." She turned and flew down from the roof. Curiosity flashed through the black-clothed man's eyes. He pondered for a moment, shook his head and suddenly smiled. He jumped down from the roof and returned to his room. The young master who was brewing tea had been watching in silence, but he didn't make any movements. There was a barrier around him. If he didn't want anyone to see him, no one could see him. Unless it was someone of a higher level than him. But was there anyone in this world who was of a higher level than him? He stood on the roof for a while and drank a few cups of tea before floating down. But this time he appeared directly in Ji Xinyu's room. After Ji Xinyu returned to her room, she sat for a while, but she didn't know why she was a little irritated. She got out of bed and moved a little. She opened the window and a faint tea fragrance floated in from outside. Strangely enough, this matcha fragrance actually calmed her slightly agitated heart down. Tea was supposed to be refreshing, but this tea fragrance had a calming effect. After her irritated heart calmed down, she gradually felt sleepy and simply went to bed. She often had insomnia, but this time she fell asleep with her pillow. In a daze, she seemed to feel that someone had sat beside her and pulled up her loose sleeves. She was an alert person. When she felt that something was wrong, she subconsciously wanted to open her eyes. However, she was probably too sleepy. Her eyelids seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds and she could not lift them at all. Feeling anxious, he fell into a deeper slumber. This time she seemed to have had a very deep dream. In the dream, she was an innocent and cute little princess who was deeply loved by her parents. The beginning of the dream was very sweet. She received the love of her parents that she had always longed for. She could also maintain that innocence. In her dream, she even fell in love with a man who could topple cities. This man treated her like a precious pearl and played with her hand. "I want to marry you, you must come and marry me." Ji Xinyu, who was in deep sleep, suddenly muttered these words. The man who was sitting by her bedside and applying ointment on her wound suddenly paused and looked down at her. She was sleeping very soundly. Her eyebrows were arched and the corners of her lips were curved. It was unknown what kind of sweet dream she was having, but she seemed to be very happy. The man looked at her for a moment and whispered, "Who do you want to marry you? Who do you like?" His voice was magnetic and gentle. In the dark night, there was a hint of seduction. The smile on Ji Xinyu's lips suddenly disappeared. Chapter 2738. The smile on Ji Xinyu's lips suddenly disappeared, her body stiffened, and her lips were tightly pursed, revealing a pained and sorrowful expression. "Why? What? The man?" He couldn't help but hold her hand and said in a low voice, "What do you mean why?" Ji Xinyu was clearly in a nightmare, her body struggled. "Let go of me, you bastard. Let go of me. I hate you. I hate you." She was struggling too hard, and her emotions were fluctuating too much, her hands and feet were writhing as if she was drowning. Her current state was obviously not conducive to healing. The man frowned slightly and steeled his heart. He pressed his palm directly on a certain acupuncture point on her chest. A faint blue light was emitted from his palm and entered her body. This light clearly had a calming effect. Ji Xinyu, who was struggling painfully, finally calmed down. Her small mouth opened and closed a few times as if she wanted to say 3 words, but no sound came out. A large teardrop rolled down from the corner of her eye. The man looked at her mouth and thought for a moment and vaguely spelled out "yi," but he didn't know if it was yi. This was too hard to guess. She could have called out a person's name or said a place name or even the beginning of a sentence. The man raised his head and rubbed between his eyebrows. He felt like he was crazy, guessing the words of a girl in her sleep. He was so bored. He shook his head and the blue light under his palm became brighter. Her eyebrows finally relaxed. It was clear that she had broken free from that nightmare, and had truly fallen into a sweet dream. And after he used this technique, he unintentionally forced her to reveal her original body. At this moment, the graceful girl was lying on the bed, her beautiful eyes were closed, her breathing was slow, and her chest was rising and falling slightly. The man's palm was still on her chest, right in the middle of her twin peaks. The man's fingers stiffened, and he quickly withdrew his hand as if it was burned. He sat there calmly for a moment, then raised his hand and rubbed between his eyebrows, feeling a bit strange today. He was a godly doctor, and if there weren't 10,000 people under his command, there were at least 8,000, and among them, there were naturally women. When he treated people, he only had eyes for the patient. No matter how beautiful they were just a human body that needed to be treated, and he didn't even think about whether the person was a man or a woman. But now he truly felt that the other person was a woman that moved his heart. His gaze fell on the scars on her arm. He shook his head again. Originally he had treated her for 3 or 4 days, and the scales and scars had decreased a lot. However, she obviously didn't listen to him and frequently used magic, which made these things worse. Originally the scales weren't very obvious, but now they were like fish scales. Each and every one of them was very distinct. Once they could open and close like fish scales, treating them would be harder than ascending to the heavens. I can't let her use any more advanced spells. However, she was still disobedient. The man thought for a moment and flicked his finger. Rays of blue light intertwined in the air and landed on her body. She seemed to be lying in the starry sky. She was extraordinarily beautiful. When the blue light fell, Ji Xinyu's body trembled slightly. Her face turned red for a moment before returning to normal. She did not wake up and was still sleeping soundly. Only then did the man let out a sigh of relief. With a wave of his sleeve, Ji Xinyu returned to the appearance of an ordinary young man, lying there without any abnormalities. Chapter 2739. The next day, Ji Xinyu woke up feeling refreshed. She felt that sleeping was even more effective than meditating. She felt so relaxed that she felt like she was floating. She rubbed her temples, faintly feeling like she had a rather sad dream. However, the scene in the dream was too hazy, and she couldn't remember anything even after thinking about it for a long time. She had never paid much attention to this dream. Since she couldn't remember it, she might as well not think about it. She walked out of the door in high spirits, only to see third young Master Qi running out with a sallow face. "Boss Shen, we can't go with you. Little brother." Little brother's stomach isn't feeling well? Before he could finish his sentence, his expression changed. "Little brother, please excuse me." He ran toward the latrine like a wisp of smoke. Ji Xinyue, first young Master Qi and second young Master Qi also ran out of the room, their faces sullen. "Boss Shen, my third brother has had a stomachache since the middle of the night. He has been running non-stop for 18 times, and there are still no signs of it stopping. If you're in a hurry, we can let you have the carriage." "What about you?" Ji Xinyue raised her eyebrows. "We'll see how it goes first. If third brother can get better in time, we'll rush over. If we don't have a carriage, I'm afraid we won't make it in time. Unfortunately, there's no carriage to rent in this small town." First young Master Qi looked regretful, his fists clenched tightly in his sleeves. "I'll leave the carriage to you. I'll think of another way." Ji Xinyue left after saying that. Anyway, there were still a few hundred miles left. If it really didn't work, she could use the flight technique. She didn't want to fight with these three brothers for the carriage. She had just walked out of the inn when a luxurious black flying horse carriage stopped in front of her. She took 2 steps back and recognized the golden cloud pattern on the carriage as the symbol of the Western Sky Imperial family. The golden silk curtain lifted, and the black-robed Shi Shuangqing walked out. He smiled at Ji Xinyue. "Brother Shen, are you going to Misty Mountain? Why don't we go together?" Ji Xinyue raised her eyebrows. "So the West Prince is also going to Misty Mountain. I heard that the West Prince doesn't care about worldly affairs. I didn't expect you to be interested in this." The Western Sky Imperial family was the furthest from Misty Mountain, a full 20,000 miles. The West Prince was also famous for not being interested in women. There were even rumors that he was a homosexual and that he had countless male pets in the palace. Could it be that the reason he went to Misty Mountain this time was because he had taken a fancy to Rongyue Tian? However, with Rongyue Tianlan's character, if they wanted to make him gay, she was afraid that he would directly ask someone to break his arm. Shi Shuangqing said, "I'm interested in those 2 people. Here it comes." She was right. Shi Shuang City was interested in Rongyue Tianlan. The reason why he added her, Ji Xinyu, was probably to deceive others. Ji Xinyu could almost see Shi Shuangqing confessing to Rongyue Tianlan in a domineering manner, only to be KO'd by Rongyue Tianlan. Ji Xinyu felt that since she had such a relationship with Shi Shuangqing, she had to remind him, "I heard that Her Highness Rongyue has another sweetheart. I know that Prince Rongyue likes the South Heaven Emperor's youngest daughter. I heard that they came together this time." Shishuang City's news was even more accurate than hers. Ji Xinyue, her first reaction was that the whole world knew about Rongyue Tianlan and Ji Tianyue's love. His second reaction was that the West Prince had come all the way here just to watch the show. Chapter 2740. Ji Xinyue expressed her admiration and gave him a thumbs up. "West Prince, you're so obsessed with exciting things." Shi Shuangqing stroked the jade thumb ring on his finger. "Actually, I'm interested in Princess Ji Xinyue. Ji Xinyue tripped on a rock, and Shi Xuanqing hurriedly helped her up. "Brother Xin?" Ji Xinyue tried to hold back but she couldn't. She blurted out, "Isn't West Prince gay?" Shi Xuanqing. He almost slapped her. His handsome face was a mix of green and white. "Ben Wang likes women, how am I cut sleeve? Who dares to twist my words like that?" Ji Xinyue thought to herself, that's how the people of the pugilistic world spread it, not just one person. Looks like this West Prince was also wronged by the rumors. Also, this prince was protected too well by his subordinates, so it was normal for him to have never heard of such rumors. Ji Xinyue had a feeling that they were both people who had fallen into the same predicament. However, she was still a little curious. The world avoids this Princess Ji Xinyue like the plague, why would your highness? Shi Xuanqing sized Ji Xinyue up and said, "Brother Xin, have you heard the latest rumors about Princess Ji Xinyue in the pugilistic world?" "What rumors?" "This princess finally showed her true self at the Nantian Palace's banquet. It said that her beauty is enough to topple cities, and she defeated Chang Bubi single-handedly. She's a rare heroine. Now, all the unmarried princes of the various clans want to see this princess's true face, and many of them are interested in her. Just this time, the princes of the Western Sky, Eastern Sky, and Northern Sky have all moved out. I heard that the East Sky Emperor is rubbing his hands together to propose marriage to Princess Ji Xinyue for his youngest son." Shi Xuanqing told her all the gossip he knew. Ji Xinyue's lips twitched. The East Sky Emperor didn't have many good points, but there was one thing that was indisputable. He was good at giving birth. 3,000 years ago, Rongyue Tianlan was his youngest son. 3,000 years later, he gave Rongyue Tianlan 3 more younger brothers. His eldest and second younger brothers were probably afraid that if Rongyue Tianlan didn't come back, Ji Xinyue would be forced to marry them. Therefore, as soon as they came of age, they hurriedly arranged a marriage for a daughter. Only the youngest brother was unmarried. Because he was only 1 year old, he was still drooling and wearing diapers. She was already over 3,300 years old this year. How could she bear to eat such tender grass? Had the East Sky Emperor's head been clamped by a door? Just as Ji Xinyue was cursing in her heart, Shi Xuanqing had already extended his hand to her. "Brother Xin, let's get in the car first. We can talk on the way." Ji Xinyue pondered for a moment. The West Prince's carriage was naturally much faster than the post carriage. If she sat in his carriage, it would save her the trouble of using her flight technique. However, once they reached the place, her identity would be exposed sooner or later. If someone saw her riding the same carriage as the West Prince, who knew what kind of rumors would spread? She hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, there was the sound of a whip not far behind her. A carriage stopped in front of the inn. 2 people came out of the carriage. It seemed that their destination was here. As soon as they got out of the carriage, they paid the driver who was wearing a bamboo hat. After paying, they turned around and entered the inn. Ji Xinyue's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't this a ready-made carriage delivered right to her doorstep? She watched as the driver waved his whip and was about to turn around and leave. Ji Xinyue said to the West Prince, "My apologies, I have other things to do, so I won't delay your highness' journey." Chapter 2741. Without waiting for Zishuangcheng to speak, she flashed in front of the empty carriage and said, "I'll rent your carriage for 1 more day, the price is negotiable." As a princess, money was the last thing she lacked. She was afraid that the cart owner would get angry on the spur of the moment. She couldn't refuse him because he was too rich. She directly took out a large ingot of gold from a brocade bag and threw it into his cart. "This is the deposit. If you send me to my destination, there will be another reward." The carriage owner was a sensible person. He asked in a low voice, "Where are we going?" "At the foot of the misty mountain." "Get on." The carriage owner flicked the whip in his hand, and the tip of the whip flew out and lifted the curtain. He waited for Ji Xinyue to enter. Ji Xinyue's eyes lit up when she saw this. She didn't expect the carriage owner to be a master. Judging by his skills, he should be almost at the level of an immortal. Ji Xinyue was bold and powerful, so she wasn't afraid of the carriage owner's tricks. She entered the carriage directly. On the other side, Shi Xuanqing was a little reluctant to give up. He simply ordered his carriage to block the road. Seeing the post carriage rushing over, his attendant stretched out his arm to stop it. "Young Master Xin, our prince still has something to say." Before he could finish, the carriage owner didn't move and the carriage didn't slow down. Just as it was about to hit the carriage owner suddenly lashed out with the whip in his hand. There was a soft swoosh. No one saw the whip at all. The four Pegasus pulling the West Prince's carriage shuddered and swerved to the side of the road. The carriage whizzed away, but Zishuangcheng's carriage almost rushed into the paddy field by the roadside. Zishuangcheng was stunned. He didn't expect the carriage driver to have such powerful skills. He didn't even see how the other party lashed out with the whip. Ji Xinyue, who was in the carriage, didn't see this. She hadn't even sat down properly when the carriage rushed out. When she steadied herself and unintentionally lifted the curtain to look outside, the three-story inn was only a small black dot. The leopard driving the carriage was a 1,000-mile leopard, right? It was so fast. Ji Xinyue had never seen a leopard driving a carriage run so fast. She curiously lifted the curtains to look outside, but was sucked in a mouthful of cold wind. When the speed reached the extreme, even if there was no wind, one could still feel the wind. Ji Xinyue felt that the wind blowing over was like a hurricane. She pulled down the curtain and sat back in the carriage. Looking out the window, she could only see the trees on both sides moving backwards in a straight line. This speed, even the flight technique was just SOSO, right? Who would have thought that she would unintentionally pick up a treasure? The carriage was indeed heading in the direction of the misty mountain. Ji Xinyue leaned against the window and looked at the scenery outside for a while. She was a little bored, so she looked inside the carriage. His heart skipped a beat. The design of the carriage was extraordinarily exquisite. The carriage didn't look big and the interior wasn't luxurious. However, every table and every stool was placed in the right place. It couldn't be more appropriate. It was extremely comfortable to sit inside. What was even rarer was that there were some hidden doors in the carriage. For example, if she pressed here, a drawer would pop out. There were exquisite snacks in the drawer. If she pressed there again, a small table would flip out. There were teapots and cups on the table. The tea in the teapot was slightly hot, just right for drinking. These things should be prepared for the passengers, right? Chapter 2742. He really couldn't be more considerate. Ji Xinyue suddenly felt that her gold ingot was worth it. She thought for a moment, then opened the curtain to discuss with the cart owner who was driving the cart in the cold wind. "Boss, after you send me to the place, can you wait for me at the foot of the mountain for 4 days? I can directly give you 10 times the price." In the cold wind, the cart owner didn't even turn his head, he only replied, "Okay." Although the cart owner didn't like to talk much, he was very easy to talk to. Ji Xinyue was satisfied. She thought for a moment, then asked, "Can I eat the things in your cart? If you need to charge extra, I can give you in advance." "No need, just eat it." The things in the cart were indeed for customers to use. She didn't guess wrong. Ji Xinyue deeply felt that this cart owner was very business-minded, and also very benevolent and honest. When he met a customer like her who didn't lack money, he didn't cheat or cheat, it was really commendable. Ji Xinyue had always been forthright towards this kind of person. The cold wind outside was bone-chilling. It wasn't easy for the cart owner to drive the cart outside. Ji Xinyue casually took out a gourd of wine and threw it to him. "Come, drink a gourd to warm your body." The cart owner raised his hand and sniffed. 30-year-old green bamboo leaf, it tastes good. Opening the gourd, he poured it down like a whale drinking from a river, then gave Ji Xinyue a thumbs up. "Good wine." She didn't expect the cart owner to be an expert in drinking. Sure enough, experts were among the people. This sentence was not wrong at all. She glanced at the person's appearance. It was an ordinary face, but his eyes were as clear as water, extremely spirited. It was rare to meet a good friend in drinking. Ji Xinyue was also interested. She took out several gourds of good wine from her storage space. The two of them didn't ask about each other's background, one inside the cart, the other outside the cart. They started drinking. Ji Xinyue didn't see wrong. This cart driver was indeed an expert in drinking. She almost threw a gourd at him, and he could guess the name of the wine with just a sniff. Even the age of the wine was exactly right. Ji Xinyue admired him so much that she couldn't help but exchange ideas with him. The cart driver didn't speak much, but every word he said hit the nail on the head. It was as if he had swept Ji Xinyue's itch, making her smile. In her life, she had seen two experts in drinking. One was Rong's Tianlan, the other was the cart driver in front of her. When they were drinking, there was a moment when Ji Xinyue almost thought that the coachman was Rong Yuetian, but then she shook her head. Apart from being experts in wine tasting, the two of them did not overlap in other aspects. Rong, a person's man's sons, he's testis b. He's tease look, tease, s of him, as therefore the doubt in Ji Xinyue's heart only flashed for a moment before she threw it away. With a good friend, 1,000 cups were too little. The two of them drank and chatted, not feeling the loneliness of the journey. The cart driver's driving skills were extraordinary. Even though he was drinking, he drove very steadily. Ji Xinyu sat in the cart. The tea on the table didn't even spill. She actually wanted to get drunk, but when she thought of today's mission, she perked up. "Young master, if you're tired, you can rest. I'll call you when we get there. There's a hangover ointment in the lower left corner of the cart. You can take a spoonful." Chapter 27:43. If you're tired, you can rest for a while. I'll call you when we arrive. There's some hangover ointment in the lower left corner of the carriage, just take a spoonful. The coachman turned around and stopped drinking with her. Ji Xinyu was familiar with the hidden doors and mechanisms in the carriage, so she quickly found the ointment. She thanked him and took a spoonful. It tasted good and had a hangover effect. Ji Xinyu was a little dizzy at first, but after taking the ointment, the dizziness disappeared completely. She leaned against the carriage and closed her eyes, wanting to take a short nap. She fell asleep after taking a short nap. In a daze, she seemed to feel someone sitting beside her and rolling up her sleeves. There was a faint coolness coming from the wound on her arm, and she seemed to smell a whiff of white plum. There were only two entrances to the Misty Mountain. One was the north side of the mountain, and the other was the south side. The north side of the mountain was steep, with the most evil beasts and demons, and miasma occasionally appeared. The south side of the mountain was relatively easier to go. Therefore, almost all the men and women who came to renew their marriage went to the south side of the mountain. Only the masters of the masters and those who liked to stand out would go to the south side of the mountain. This time there were equally many onlookers at the Misty Mountain. Most of them thought that the masters of the masters like Rongyue Tianlan and Ji Xinyu might challenge the north side of the mountain, so that they could stand out. Of course, there were also some people who thought that the two of them didn't seem like masters who liked to look for trouble, so the possibility of them going to the south side of the mountain was higher. People with two different viewpoints couldn't convince each other, so they just looked at each other. Ji Xinyu was woken up by the noise outside. She opened her eyes and looked outside. The scene outside could only be described with one word: endless traffic, as lively as a gathering. The veins on Ji Xinyue's forehead throbbed. Although she was mentally prepared, she thought that there would be many people watching. She didn't expect there to be so many. Even the busiest streets in the city weren't as lively as here. The carriage she was in naturally slowed down and stopped at a crossroad. The coachman's voice came, "Master, are you going to the north or south side of the mountain?" "This is the north of the mountain." Ji Xinyu decisively lifted the curtain and said, "Let's go to Shannon." She didn't care where Rongyue Tianlan went, she was going to Shannon. She was here to break off the engagement, not to show off. She didn't want to waste any of her energy on acting tough. "Okay." The coachman agreed and drove the carriage to a fork in the road that led in another direction. Just as Ji Xinyu was about to put down the curtain, she suddenly heard a commotion coming from the north of the mountain. The carriage of the Nantian imperial family. "Look, it's the Nantian imperial family's carriage." "It really is. Is Princess Ji Xinyu in the carriage?" "Maybe. No wonder I haven't seen her for the past few days. Looks like she's really in the car." A moment later, Ji Xinyu saw a golden carriage pulled by 8 fiery heavenly colts galloping over from the distance. Ji Xinyu was quite familiar with her family's carriage, and her gaze landed on the totem of a full moon on the roof of the carriage. The totem looked very noble. Below it was a blue sea, and above the sea, a bright moon rose. Whether it was the undulating waves of the sea or the bright moon, they were all depicted in detail and were extremely lifelike. Chapter 27:44. Ji Xinyu recognized that it was Ji Tianyu's. This was Ji Tianyu's carriage. A few years ago when she returned to the palace, the little girl even pulled her hand and showed off to her, saying that it was a birthday gift from her father. He even dragged her into the carriage and drove her around the palace. At that time it was a coincidence that they met South Heaven Emperor. South Heaven Emperor saw that she was a little embarrassed in the carriage, and probably felt that he was too biased, so he quietly made a wish to her, saying that when she turned 3,500 years old, he would give her a luxurious carriage as well. At that time she casually agreed and didn't say anything else. It wasn't the first time she was ignored in her life, and after so many times she became numb to it. She didn't take South Heaven Emperor's promise to heart. Probably no one would have thought that she, Ji Shenyu, didn't have her own carriage in South Heaven Palace. She looked at the luxurious carriage with her head propped up, and understood that the person inside the carriage was the little sister she once doted on. She was so young, so she definitely didn't come by herself. Then who was accompanying her in the carriage? This carriage appeared in such a high-profile manner, so it naturally attracted the attention of most people. People were still guessing, but the main direction of their guesses was that this carriage belonged to Ji Shenyu, and they were all guessing where she was in the carriage. The pearl curtains swayed, and under the sunlight there was a thin layer of light, so people couldn't see the situation inside the carriage. Many people stretched their necks to look inside, but they couldn't see anything. Suddenly, a slender hand appeared from the curtains. The 5 fingers were long, tender, and snow-white. Such a small hand was as transparent as a jade carving under the reflection of the pearl curtains. People held their breaths, and countless bright eyes stared at this hand. What a beautiful hand! However, this hand seemed a little small, and didn't seem to belong to an adult woman. Just as people were guessing, the bead curtain was lifted halfway, revealing half of a face that was as beautiful as a flower. The owner of that small face didn't seem to expect so many people to stare at her, and her snow-white face blushed slightly. She stuck out her tongue and hurriedly shrank back. The bead curtain swayed again, and the little beauty was no longer visible. Only the little girl's giggles could be heard from within the carriage. "Brother Yu, there are so many people outside. Are they all here to see Shenyu Jiejian? So many people came for the annulment ceremony. Are you nervous?" Her voice was sometimes high and sometimes low. Some words were enunciated clearly, while others were enunciated vaguely. However, almost all of the people outside were shrewd people. From these words, they had already guessed most of what had happened. The person on the carriage was the little princess of the South Heaven Emperor's family. Although the person on the same carriage as her didn't show himself, it should be the 8th Highness without a doubt. Originally, people were skeptical about the rumor that Rongyue Tianlan had a special liking for little Princess Ji Tianyue, thinking that it was illogical. After all, the age difference between the two was too great. When Rongyue Tianlan and Ji Shenyu were engaged, Rongyue Tianlan had just reached adulthood, while Ji Shenyu was still an infant. One of the reasons why the 8th Highness ran away from the marriage was that the other party was too young, and the two of them were not compatible. Now he had found an even smaller one. Furthermore, she was the younger sister of his current fiancé. People generally felt that it was impossible, so they just treated it as a rumor. Now it seemed that it was true. If the 8th Highness came to the annulment ceremony with this little princess, wouldn't it be an official announcement to the world that he was interested in little Princess Ji Tianyue? Chapter 2745. But what would happen to his fiancée, Princess Ji Shenyu, by doing this? Although he wanted to break off the engagement, everyone thought that it was unkind of him to do so. Rongyue Tianlan came with the little princess. Then what about Princess Ji Shenyu? Where was she now? He wondered how embarrassed she would be if she were to see this scene. The luxurious carriage of the southern sky little princess drove towards the north of the mountain, leaving behind the sounds of discussion. Naturally, the crowd that was still hesitant about what to do followed the carriage. Ji Shenyu put down the curtain and said to the carriage owner outside, "Let's go." The carriage owner leaned against the carriage with his arms crossed. The discussion of those people naturally entered his ears. He was expressionless and just listened indifferently. He also glanced at the luxurious carriage, but no emotions could be seen in his eyes. Hearing Ji Shenyu's order, he suddenly smiled. "Are you still sure about going to the south of the mountain?" "Why not?" Ji Shenyu asked back. She also smiled. Her Highness Rongyue might like to be in the limelight. But that princess is not. I bet she just wants to break off the engagement quietly. She doesn't want to put on a show in front of anyone. The carriage driver was silent for a moment, then laughed again. "Okay, to the south of the mountain." The carriage started to move again. The southern foot of the misty mountain was near the sea. This place was obviously different from the north. The vegetation here was extremely lush. Thick and light green, speckled with colorful stars. The trees here were obviously subtropical. Tall coconut trees were everywhere. Banyan trees with countless aerial roots each had a trunk that was thick enough for several people to wrap their arms around. The road to the entrance of the mountain was opened by people. Because there were usually few people on this road at this moment, there were already plants under the thick stone slabs on the road, making the huge stones on the road uneven. From time to time, there would be traces of all kinds of beasts on the road. At this moment, this road, which was usually very deserted, was full of carriages of all kinds. There were nobles, generals, ministers, high officials and nobles as well as ordinary people. The closer they got to the entrance, the more crowded it was. On the trees, on the huge stones, on the mountain peak, it was full of people. Ji Xinyu put the curtain on the carriage and rubbed her slightly swollen eyebrows. Just how bored were these people to come and watch the show? The car suddenly stopped and the car owner's voice sounded, "The road ahead is already congested. Do you still want to go in?" Ji Xinyu thought for a moment, then lifted the curtain. "I'll get off now." She could go in by herself and reveal her identity to the guard at the entrance. When she raised her head, she saw the coachman looking at her with a faint smile. This expression was too familiar. Her heart skipped a beat. "You?" the coachman smiled. "Why do you have to walk in yourself? You have to go in openly. Sit tight." Just as the word "sit tight" landed, Ji Xinyu felt the car suddenly shake. His vision suddenly blurred. When this carriage first appeared on this road, no one noticed it. After all, this carriage didn't look any different from other carriages. But now there were too many of these carriages on this road. At a glance they could be seen everywhere. However, a five-colored light suddenly rose from the carriage. The five-colored light was extremely dazzling, attracting everyone's attention. Under everyone's gazes, the carriage underwent a shocking transformation. There were more in the morning. Dear friends, now is the double monthly ticket period. If everyone casts a ticket, Mumu will be counted as 2 tickets. At the end of the month, Mumu released another round of chapters. It's estimated that those who didn't have monthly tickets before will soon have monthly tickets. Everyone, you have to check your monthly ticket column every day and try to vote. Who knows, maybe one of your tickets will fly out. Haha. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.